Let's go ahead and call this board meeting to order then. It is December 17th and it is 9:34 a.m. The first item on the agenda is roll call to determine quorum. Maria, whenever you're ready.
Miss Aldine? Miss Bennett?
Here.
Mr. Bass?
Here.
Miss Conrad Seda?
Here.
Miss Faustinos? One moment. We're going to move Miss Faustinos over. I'll circle back, Miss Faustinos. Miss Gustafson?
Sorry, yes, here.
Miss Hayes? Miss Hill? Mr. Henigman?
Here.
Mr. Keykeper?
Here.
Miss Lane?
Here.
Miss Loomer?
Here.
Mr. Rice? Mr. Settlemeyer? Miss Williamson?
Here.
Miss Faustinos?
Here.
Okay. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder to our remote committee members not to use the chat box to make any comments or have sidebar conversations. Next up is the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all rise, please, and say the pledge.
To the flag. States of America. To the republic.
Thank you. Our next item, agenda item 3, is our public comment period for items on this agenda. Members of the public wishing to address the governing board on any agenda item, including items on the consent calendar, may do so at this time. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Let's go ahead and start in the room. Do we have members of the public wishing to make comment in the room at this time? Seeing none, let's go online. Do we have opening public comment online?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 6 hands raised online so far. First hand up, Ann Nichols. Ann, please unmute to make your comment.
Good morning, Ann Nichols, North Tahoe Preservation Alliance. I've watched TRPA for 55 years. I've lived through the moratorium of the 80s. I watched TRPA shift course in the early 2000s when the compact was amended to elevate economic considerations. I watched the 2012 regional plan promote large, dense community enhancement projects that promised environmental and community benefits on paper, but delivered far more development than protection. Phase 2 is being justified as a solution to affordable housing, but these amendments do not require income caps, do not ensure long-term affordability, and are not enforceable. Deed restriction alone does not make housing affordable. Without income limits, these units will quickly drift to market rate housing. You are also being told that growth is capped, but this cap relies on accounting mechanisms, conversions, and bonus unit assumptions, not on a clear enforceable limit on people, vehicles, or square footage. A cap that can be redefined is not a cap. Phase 2 lowers development costs by increasing height, density, and coverage while reducing parking requirements. Basic economics tells us that increasing developer incentives does not produce affordability. It produces larger projects and higher returns. That may work for developers, but it does not work for Tahoe. Most concerning, phase 2 moves forward without a cumulative analysis of transportation, evacuation, air quality, infrastructure capacity, or wildfire risk. Impacts that Washoe County residents will live with long after this vote. Approving phase 2 today locks in policies that cannot be easily undone and shifts the burden of risk onto the basin and its communities. I urge you not to approve Washoe County phase 2 at this time. Send it back, require real affordability standards, enforceable caps, and a full cumulative report analysis before moving forward. TRPA was created to protect Lake Tahoe first, not to experiment with unproven housing theories at the basin's expense. Thank you.
The next hand raised is Matthew Fleming. Matthew, please unmute to make your comment.
Yes, good morning, members of the board and TRPA staff. My name is Matthew Fleming. I'm the Executive Director of Northern Nevada Community Housing. I want to begin by recognizing the TRPA's leadership in advancing affordable, moderate, and attainable housing across the basin. As a nonprofit developer that works exclusively in this space, I see firsthand how important this policy framework is to successful project delivery. The TRPA has taken meaningful steps to acknowledge that housing needs exist along a continuum from deeply affordable housing aligned with state programs at or below 60% of AMI to moderate and attainable housing that serves households earning above traditional subsidy thresholds but still priced out of the market in high-cost communities like the Tahoe Basin. From a development and financing perspective, the TRPA's support for multifamily housing and increased density is particularly important. Density is often the only way affordable and attainable projects can achieve feasibility while also advancing regional goals related to land efficiency and reduced vehicle miles traveled. I also want to acknowledge the TRPA's emphasis on long-term affordability and occupancy controls. Deed restrictions that prioritize primary residency and limit short-term rental conversion are essential to preserving housing stock for the local workforce over time. One refinement that would further strengthen this work is continuing to standardize and simplify deed restriction language, particularly for moderate and attainable housing, so requirements are easily understood by homeowners, lenders, and compliance staff. Clear, plain language standards improve financing, compliance, and long-term durability without reducing affordability. As an active stakeholder, I strongly support the direction the TRPA is taking. Clear and consistent policies around affordable, moderate, and attainable housing directly influence underwriting and the project feasibility and give organizations like ours the confidence to invest and build housing that serves the long-term community's needs. Thank you for your continued leadership, and I wish you all a wonderful holiday season.
The next hand raised is Alan Miller. Alan, please unmute to make your comment.
Hello. With 3 minutes to provide written comments or oral comments on 3 items of interest, going to have to move pretty fast here. You have my written comments to the APC and you. And on the ADUs, I'll just say they won't bring affordable housing, just higher densities in areas that are poorly suited to support that. And on the area plans, your code language is coercive with its use of shall and requires local entities to permit fraud on behalf of TRPA at taxpayer expense. And I, for one, do not consent to subsidizing TRPA's permitting activities at my city level. I'm mainly here to protest because of the proposed amendments on the non-conforming piers. And really just to reiterate the mantra that I've been saying for at least a year or so now, I think, which is a very simple concept. Keep Tahoe pure, microplastics endure, use wood, metal, and stone in the shore zone. There was discussion at the APC that had several members recommending development of formal plastics control regulations, as I've been arguing for years, at least for repairs and replacements of plastic structures in the shore zone was what the APC was considering. And that's important. And that has been exempt from environmental review, and that needs to end lake-wide as a start. Also very important is the Tahoe Keys Property Owners Association MOU with TRPA and exemptions for repair and replacement of plastic docks under that. We have to get rid of the plastics in Lake Tahoe, and we have to start with repair and replacements And I'm here to recommend that you do move into formal planning as the APC recommended to develop control regulations for plastics and microplastics, which are extremely damaging to our lake environment and ultimately to our economy and all the other values that TRPA ostensibly supports. So I'm really just here again to say, keep Tahoe pure, microplastics endure, use wood, metal, and stone in the shore zone, and make it clear to all through formal rulemaking, and let's get with it.
The next hand raise is Jaden Wolzer. Jaden, please unmute to make your comment.
Hello, my name is Jaden Wolzer, and I am with Xline and Company, and I am speaking in support of the Washoe County Area Plan amendments today. The proposed amendments will allow property owners in the basin access to affordable housing, among other things. The amendments will also allow the area plan maps to be more accurate and to adhere to the TRPA Code of Ordinances. Affordable housing is a hot topic in the basin and is needed for workforce. It is essential to maintain a thriving year-round economy. Approval of the area plan amendments on the agenda today will support the local community immensely. I also just want to thank Washoe County and TRPA staff for the diligent work that they have been doing to get these proposed amendments through to approval. Thank you all and happy holidays.
And the last hand raised is Steve Teixeira. Steve, please unmute to make your comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Governing Board. For the record, my name is Steve Teixeira. I'm speaking today as a member of the TRPA Advisory Planning Commission. And this is also in reference to your public hearing item today, 8B, the Washoe Tahoe Area Plan Amendments. As noted in your staff report for this item, APC members considered this package of amendments during our November 12th meeting. As a diligent member, I read the detailed staff report in our meeting packet for that day and listened carefully to the staff presentations by TRPA planner Michelle Brown and Washoe County planner Kat Oakley. I was an APC member during the historic joint governing board APC meetings in December of 2012 when the regional plan amendments were approved. Among the most significant of these was the partnership between TRPA and Tahoe's local government jurisdictions in the preparation and adoption of area plans. The Washoe County Tahoe Area Plan amendments before you today is another manifestation of that partnership. Among the facts that stood out to me as I read and listened during all the public outreach related to this proposed set of amendments, the need for workforce and affordable housing was a recurring theme. For the Phase 2 housing-related amendments made by TRPA, APC, and the Governing Board review is limited to confirming that the Washoe Area Plan amendments are specific to the housing needs. For Washoe County's additional amendments, those not required by the Phase 2 housing amendments, the APC and Governing Board need to determine whether the proposed changes are in conformance with the TRPA regional plan. The memorandum in your packet from Washoe County Planner Kat Oakley describes in detail the process the Washoe County Planning Commission and its Board of County Commissioners went through to reach their approval decisions. The memo describes the public outreach process on pages 270 through 272. TRPA's public outreach and process to prepare and approve the agency's Phase 2 housing amendments was also extremely thorough. Including my testimony today, I respectfully urge you as TRPA Governing Board members to approve the required findings for adoption of the Washoe County Tahoe Area Plan amendments as described in your packet, along with adopting the required ordinance. Thank you very much.
And one more hand went up, Madam Chair. Rhonda Teiser, please unmute to make your comment.
Good morning and thank you for your service. All of our concerns have been well stated. Doug Flaherty and Nichols, Toby Tyler, and Pamela Sigdinas, among others, have covered all the issues we find problematic with the approval of the Washoe County Tahoe Area Plan. I won't repeat them here. We all want affordable housing for our employees. We hope something will work out for the old elementary school property. But Incline Village is not urban and not a municipality. The California legislative laws for urban areas simply do not apply. Consequently, TRPA's application of these laws to the village of Incline are simply wrong-headed. Incline has a unique character formed by its development on an incline, with a layout of intentionally crooked streets, with more than 100 cul-de-sacs along 200 roads. Although ADUs may be appropriate on lots along some of the roads, they're totally inappropriate in cul-de-sacs, where residents already share highly limited parking space. The crooked streets limit easy exiting to our two main arteries, Highway 28 through the flatland part of the incline, and Highway 431 through the uphill part. In any major emergency evacuation, this is fire, flood, or earthquake, whatever, cars will be jam-packed and stopped before they can reach the highways. Gridlock will occur everywhere. Building more and denser housing, especially along our main artery of Highway 28, means increased gridlock along our only two-way exit. Most incline residents recognize the folly of permitting developers to increase the number of people to be evacuated. Consequently, nearly 300 of our residents have signed a petition requesting that dense development not be allowed, but we have been ignored. The California legislative machine grinds ever forward. At this point, all we can do is hope that we will never experience an emergency requiring evacuation from our homes. We have done all we legally could using the public input means at our disposal. Now, all we can do is pray.
And Madam Chair, there are no more hands raised to comment.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is approval of the agenda. Director Reagan, are there any changes?
No changes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will deem the agenda approved as posted. Next up is agenda item 5. This is approval of the meeting minutes from November 19th, which is on page 19 of your packet. Any changes? Or I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I move to approve minutes from the governing board meeting on November 19th, 2025 as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to agenda item 6, which is our consent calendar. There are 4 items on consent. Brooke, Member Lane, can we please have a report out from Ops and Governance? These are items 1 through 3 on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Operations and Governance Committee met this morning, and we thoroughly reviewed the November financials, and we find them to be in good order, nothing glaring. We also talked about the fiscal year 2025 audited financial statements, and we reviewed those. Congratulations to Mr. Cox and his team as they got an unmodified opinion on those financial statements and no material weaknesses, which is the best outcome you can possibly get in an audit. So congratulations to them. We recommend approval of the audited financial statements. And finally, as the I forget what we call ourselves, the RTPA, we get pass-through funds from the federal government, and we're recommending approval of item number 3, which is the disbursement of those funds, as well as the State of Good Repair project list. So we recommend approval of all 3.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, on number 4, I have a property in the Tahoe Basin that could benefit from this in Placer County, so I need to recuse on that item.
Thank you.
I do as well.
Thank you both. What we'll do then is take consent agenda items 1 through 3 before we take 4. Any questions or comments on consent agenda items 1 through 3? Mr. Bass?
Oh, I should have not closed my computer. I believe it's item 3, and which is the TRPA, the TDA fund pass through. And I just want to put it on the record. We talked about it at our committee. There has been a lot of talk and really at the TTD board more around funds that are coming for operations and transit. And if we look at this item, it clearly shows those funds from TDA or for El Dorado County and for Placer County. And as of recent, we've seen the service at TARP be cut out of at Crystal Bay and Incline because there hasn't been Nevada funding to support the transit operations. However, on the South Shore, we're still supporting transit operations with our TDA funds. And I think it's just, again, it's not my intention in any way to want to see our regional system broke up. My intention is to hope that Nevada can see they need to come from the state of Nevada with some transit operations funding to TRPA in the same way that California has for decades. And we want a regional system, but it takes regional contribution. And I think this is just something important for the record.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on consent items 1 through 3?
I would move approval.
Thank you. We have a motion. I believe we need a roll call on consent. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Aldine,
Yes.
Mr. Bass, Ms. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Ms. Hill, Ms. Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Keycapher,
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Rice,
Yes.
Mr. Henigman,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Loomer,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, motion passes.
Thank you. Let's take up consent item 4, noting the abstentions of Member Gustafson and Member Honigman. Director Settlemeyer, can we please have a report from last month's Regional Planning Committee meeting about the Placer County IPES buildable line?
We had a discussion on that item and it passed through. Everything seemed to be okay with the discussion. There was no real problems that came forward. I really don't know what to say other than that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on consent calendar item 4? Okay. Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve item 4.
Move to approve.
Thank you. And can we please have a roll call vote again?
Ms. Aldine,
Yes.
Mr. Bass,
Yes.
Ms. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Ms. Hill, Ms. Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Keycapher,
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Recusing on this.
Mr. Rice,
Yes.
Mr. Henigman,
Also recusing.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Loomer,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. Let's move on then to agenda item 7, which is Nevada Division of State Parks Van Sickle by State Park Phase 2 improvements. The project includes 2 employee housing units and a maintenance building, Douglas County, Nevada, TRPA file number EIPC 2025-0025, Environmental Improvement Program number 0301020124. Information on this item can be found on page 175, and I believe I'm turning it over to Shannon Friedman, please, for a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, governing board members. I'm Shannon Friedman with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. I am very excited to talk to you about the future of Van Sickle by State Park today. The Nevada Division of State Parks is proposing the Van Sickle by State Park Phase 2 improvement project. This project includes 2 employee housing units and a building to store materials and maintain equipment on site. Elizabeth Kingsland with State Parks is here today to help answer any questions that the governing board may have at the conclusion of this presentation. Next slide, please. Now, there are only a handful of bi-state parks in the United States and only one in the Western United States, and that's Van Sickle by State Park. So how cool is that it's in our backyard? I think it's pretty incredible. The green area shows the boundary of the state park. It is 725 acres. The dotted line shows the state boundary, and the lower left side is the area that is in California, and that is owned and maintained by the California Tahoe Conservancy. And then the right upper portion is the portion of the park that is in Nevada, and that is owned and maintained and operated by the Nevada Division of State Parks. It is located in State Line, Nevada and South Lake Tahoe, California, directly adjacent to the tourist core, which is, the largest bed base of Lake Tahoe. The heavy white lines on there show a road network. So you can see Highway 50 on there, and then the white road kind of above the park is Kingsbury Grade. So it's literally just down the road from where we are today. The Nevada portion of the state park is located in the Kingsbury Drainage Plan Area Statement, which is a conservation plan area statement. The land uses allowed within this plan area statement are primarily conservation and recreation. And so housing is a special use, which is one of the reasons why this project requires governing board approval today. The other reason is just coverage. The coverage associated with these improvements requires governing board approval. Those are the two reasons why it requires your approval, but we also really just wanted to highlight all of the good work that the both states are doing here, especially with the linkage to all of the housing initiatives that are occurring at TRPA and the jurisdictions. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please.
What is the little sliver of white, that little island there right by the boundary?
I can answer it for you. It's actually the STPUD water tanks. And they still own that land because they have the 2 water tanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Bass.
Thank you. I was like, "Ooh, you got me."
We have to invite you to the staff party.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Okay, so back to this slide. This is just another view of the same area. On the left, you see Lake Tahoe, and then moving to the right, you see the urban tourist core. This is the largest bed base in South Lake Tahoe. It has a lot of businesses, restaurants, the casinos. The South Shore Transit Center is also located right here. And then directly adjacent is Van Sickle Bi-State Park. The park is located or is broken up into a few different zones. You see the front country zone and then kind of the transition and back country zones. The front country zone is where all of the improvements are located. And then the other zones are where all of the dispersed recreation happens, sightseeing, hiking, biking. And it is really a unique park because of its proximity to the urban core. And it provides people a way to bike, walk, take transit to the park, and not have to rely on the private automobile to get there and enjoy all of the recreation amenities that the park has to offer. Next slide, please. I wanted to provide a little bit of history on the park and how we got to where we are today. Originally, most of the land that is currently Van Sickle State Park was private land. In 1988, Jack Van Sickle donated a large chunk of land to the state of Nevada with the purpose of providing conservation and recreation. Shortly thereafter, California Tahoe Conservancy purchased the land on the California side, and the Nevada Division of State Parks acquired the land on the Nevada side. In 2005, both states developed a vision plan to identify what improvements they wanted to have at the park to support recreation and conservation. And it's really unique that this bi-state park happened and that these 2 state agencies came together to develop this park. It really highlights the partnership and the collaborative framework that is Team Tahoe and the Environmental Improvement Program. Shortly after the vision plan, phase 1 improvements were implemented in 2012. That included the entrance road and day use areas in both Nevada and California, including parking, trailheads, signage, restrooms, and other recreation support amenities. In 2019, the states updated the vision plan to prepare for future improvements at the park. Those future improvements included expanding the trail network so the park could be accessible to all from the tourist core to the park. It included public gathering spaces, a visitor center, and it also identified the workforce housing. A campground is also identified in that vision plan that is further out into the future and not part of any of these improvements right now. In 2025, the California Tahoe Conservancy acquired some additional land, and this is going to allow them to build out that trail network and have access from the core into the park, as well as some additional gathering spaces. Earlier this year, TRPA approved phase 3, which included the visitor center and some additional parking and kind of relocated parking to make space for some of these amenities. Next slide, please. So the phase 2 improvements include 2 employee housing units. They're permitted as a single family unit with an accessory dwelling unit, which is allowed in that Kingsbury Drainage Plan Area Statement. This is a depiction of what that housing will look like. You can see it's very nice housing, designed to blend in with the natural environment and meet TRPA scenic design guidelines. Currently, the ranger lives in a trailer on the California side of the park. And as this park is built out and the vision plan is fully implemented, there is a need for more ranger presence at the park and a need for them to have adequate housing for themselves and their families. So this housing supports TRPA's goals to provide workforce housing, as well as the goals for the state of Nevada to provide workforce housing. It also includes a shop to provide, like I said, maintenance and store equipment in a way that is safe and aesthetically pleasing. Next slide, please. This project will advance several TRPA thresholds. It will improve access and safety of a recreation site. And then it will also advance thresholds in transportation and sustainable communities by improving the trail network and access to the park and by providing that workforce housing. And you know, when I did this slide, I just checked those 2 boxes, but we know that providing active transportation and workforce housing has direct links to air quality and water quality. So I think we should mentally check those boxes as well. And then it maintains the other ones. You know, everything is designed to meet our scenic resources. So in true EIP fashion, it is achieving multiple thresholds. Next slide, please. In addition to achieving those thresholds, it also touches on all 4 of the TRPA strategic priorities. The housing achieves our Tahoe living priority, and we know that there is that direct link between providing housing and the environment. Keeping Tahoe moving is achieved with the trails and the connections to the tourist core. And then just the watershed improvements. And in that strategic priority, it actually identifies that sustainable recreation access has a link to lake and watershed restoration. And simultaneously, while this is going on, State Parks is actively doing fuels reduction and forest health work out there, achieving the forest health and wildfire priority. And having full-time rangers on there and having them be able to live out there allows them to keep their eyes on the park and see if there are anything going on and maybe catch a wildfire right when it starts and being able to act quickly. So it touches on all of those priorities. Next slide, please. There has been robust public engagement throughout the planning and implementation of Van Sickle Bi-State Park. During the 2019 vision plan update, there was public outreach and a public survey. There was 174 responses to that public survey, and they widely supported the elements of the vision plan, primarily supporting anything that would enhance, support, recreation, and conservation at the state park. In preparation for this governing board meeting, TRPA sent out notices to affected property owners, and as of today, we did not receive any public comment on this project. Next slide, please. That concludes the presentation, and I just wanted to point out this picture here is a picture or a view from a scenic vista at Van Sickle, and you can see how gorgeous is that. And you can actually see the casinos there on the right, and so you really see how close it is to the casino core and how within minutes you can walk or bike from there, go up a hill and get this incredible view. So it's really a incredible place to go, and if you've not seen this view, I'll happily take you. And with that, I will pause and take any questions or any comments.
Thanks, Shannon. Any questions or comment from the board? Director Settlemeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I'm the Director of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I oversee the state parks in that respect. So just want to make sure everyone knows that. And discussions, so that doesn't mean I need to abstain in any way, shape, or form, since I'm obviously not pecuniarily advantaged or disadvantaged by this vote. But that being said, it would be phenomenal to be able to solve some of the resource problems that we have there. And the project here will do that with the EIP. Beyond that, we've all been continually saying that it's impossible almost to have people who can work in the Tahoe area without some form of housing. And that's exactly where we're at. Having somebody living in a trailer is not ideal, to say the least, and is influencing our ability to retain individuals willing to work, even in this beautiful atmosphere, to say the least. So with that, I full-heartedly support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Settlemeyer. Any other questions or comments from the board? I see Belinda online, but in room first, we're going to do in room first. Go ahead, Mr. Bass.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious, again, I think it also is great to see this being built in the park, but I'm wondering, in the vision plan, there was 4 alternatives for that showed these in the housing in different parts of the park. And I'm just curious, where did we land? Which alternative, kind of where is the housing going to be? Because it wasn't in our staff report. So in the vision plan, I believe this is page 27 and 28. Is one of those where the site's going to be?
Yes, great question. So if you could go to slide 3, please. So the housing, like I said, it's all in that front country zone, the day use area. And it's hard to see on this. Shoot, I wish I could pull up like a Google map or something. But basically, when you go in the entrance road, if you know where the existing day use area is on the Nevada side, it's the location of the housing is basically between the state line and that location. So as you go on the road to the day use area, on the left side, you'll turn, and that is where the housing will be located. It will be screened with vegetation, and it will not be visible from Pioneer Trail because it's set back far enough. So does that give you a good idea of where it's located?
Yeah, no, it does. I guess somewhat of my thoughts when I looked at this initially and just kind of, we're definitely going to be taking down quite a few trees, which again, I know some of that is good, but there's 30 old growth trees, and it definitely brought up concerns. Again, I support this project, want to see it wholeheartedly happen, but I'm just wondering, site-wise through the park, that we analyze other sites that may not have to create a new pad and everything. For instance, where the existing ranger is staying in the trailer. I know this needs to somewhat be in Nevada, but there is an alternative where it shows the housing side right on the other side of the Nevada line, and then the maintenance and that side was still in the California side. And again, that's an area where we wouldn't be taking down trees. And however, I also realize that you're in the view of the gondola, so that might not be as great for housing. But I'm just looking at it as a state park, removing 30 old growth trees. If there's another site that we don't have to do that, I'm wondering if we took in and looked at that. And that may not be what was under the purview of TRPA, so you may not know that, but I'm just couldn't find it myself.
Yeah, I can start, and then maybe Liz with State Lands could fill in if I miss anything. The housing is an initiative with the state of Nevada, and so we do want the housing to be on the Nevada side. A lot of the improvements are on the Nevada side. Most of the land is on the Nevada side, and that's just the nature and also within the vision plan. Like I said, the California Tahoe Conservancy is planning improvements on the California side, including some day use areas. And that is a location where maybe one of those day use areas are. And when they're designing the housing, it is taking the natural environment into account and tree removal. I don't know if there is an alternative in the same general location that would achieve the same goals and reduce the number of trees. One thing that we always do during design is look for opportunities to retain trees. And if you can move it a little bit, then that's always a possibility. So I'll pause there and see if there's anything that Liz with State Lands wants to add about the siting of it, and if there's a location that would save more trees. And we also have an engineer online that may.
Before Liz gets up there, this is Director Settlemeyer. I know that the group has gone through a lot of work, state parks, and trying to analyze all the different options to be best as far as overall view shed, so that the experience is not interfered with from those individuals, so that they don't necessarily see the house. There's also a desire when you're living in a house not to see everybody else, kind of a two-way street there. And also to do what's best overall for the environment, as we do have a forester within division. DCNR has looked at different things and tried to weigh those various options. There was some discussion, from everyone putting in California. Of course, it's kind of interesting that the Nevada system under its capital improvement projects has this little rule that they can only spend money in Nevada. Kind of weird. But anyways, thank you.
Good afternoon, Liz Kingsland. I'm with Nevada State Parks. I was actually, in terms of like the alternative analysis and the exact placement, that actually happened before I came on board with the park. And so if Tim Hunt he's not on the call? Okay, so I'm not going to be able to answer the question specifically about all the analysis that was done there. But I will say, in terms of Nevada State Parks, we are looking to have our rangers that work for Nevada State Parks actually housed on site. And so the location's, definitely going to be on the Nevada side for that reason.
Yeah, no, I never recommended it. I know it needs to be on the Nevada side, but there is an alternative that shows the housing right on the other side of the Nevada line, but at the entrance of the park, which is an area that I don't think would take the same site development. Again, I'm just wondering, because when I look at, like, we're creating a whole new site, and in that park, there are areas where the trees are already down, where there was existing housing, we have cabins built, and I'm just wondering, but I do recognize it needs to be in Nevada, and I'm not even questioning that side of it.
This is Director Settlemeyer. We did do a lot of analysis on it. I don't believe that we're going to be cutting down 30 trees. We found ways to incorporate the trees into the area. However, if there are trees that are dying and potentially run a bigger risk of falling on, then obviously we're going to cut those down, because we'd hate to make an investment and have it land upon it. But there was an immense amount of work that was done. As far as the analysis of the one you're discussing right on the entrance, it did come down to an aspect that it'd be highly visible, not only to the experience of those individuals using that day use area, but even some argument that you could actually see it from the road. And then, of course, then we have our rangers. Will it be a better protective mechanism? Because clearly they'd be more visible when somebody accidentally comes in the park at night. It also raises concerns, and their whole life it's not really home. It becomes more like living in a store all, and we didn't feel that was right either. So we did try to weigh all those and balance them to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And I hope that the 30 trees, but in here it did say 30 old growth trees would be removed. So that's what caught my eye and got me really concerned.
And Madam Chair, if I can just build on the discussion, and Shannon answered the question, but just to put a fine point on it. In practice, when implementation ramps up, our teams work together very closely. An example of that to protect the trees we can, to make the project as good as it possibly can be. You approve the Spooner Mobility Hub and the Aquatic Invasive Species Inspection Station, but our teams got together with NDOT, the Tahoe Transportation District, the Forest Service. We walked the site. We actually even modified plans to add more vegetation screening on the highway to reduce the number of trees that would potentially have to be removed for that project. So in practice, we do that kind of work all the time. So appreciate your comments, and we'll take them to heart.
All right, Ms. Conrad-Seda.
Thanks so much, Ashley Conrad-Seda, for the record. I apologize if I missed this from the Zoom to room transfer, but did you talk at all about the disposition of the trees coming down, and if they'd be milled and used on site or sent to a biomass facility, or any of that discussion?
That would probably be a question best answered by Liz of the state of Nevada. I don't know if they have a plan of what to do with the trees. Sometimes that's in their specifications, that they leave it up to the contractor, that they get to decide what to do with the trees, unless they specify that they're considered a resource that the state would like to acquire. I don't know, Liz, if you know one way or the other, if there's a desire, but typically in the specs, it's the contractor is able to do what they want with those trees, if there's any value to them, and they bid accordingly.
Liz Kingsland, for the record, again, kind of what Shannon was saying, I believe it was going to be up to the contractor to take down those trees, and so it would be responsible for moving off site. Nevada Division of Forestry does have a mill and mobile one that they're able to use on site. And as Shannon had mentioned earlier, our Division of Forestry is actually going through and doing all their forest restoration before the project starts. So any of that can be incorporated in mills, but the trees that were moved prior to construction generally are left up to the contractor to manage.
Dr. Settlemeyer, do you have something to add?
In that respect, and discussions on this point, as was mentioned, Traditionally, it is allowed to the contractor since it's an asset that they get to deal with. However, we have, of course, anybody who puts out for bid of this, we're going to, of course, give them the information for the Washoe Tribal Mill as a logical location of where those trees potentially should go. However, again, it is up to that contractor. If for some reason they leave the trees, believe us, we'll put it to good use.
Follow up, Ms. Conrad-Zeta.
Just as a follow-up, I would highly encourage that, when you put out the bid for contract, you include, additional points potentially for turning the trees down into a facility on site, specifically because it's also a really good educational opportunity, just to talk about forest health in a way that the carbon from the trees and the trees themselves can be used for longer term infrastructure. So I would just highly encourage that, if it's possible at all, to put it into the requirements for the bid.
Thank you. Other questions in the room before I go to Belinda? Okay, Ms. Faustinos, please go ahead.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the comments being made by my fellow board members. I just want to commend the state of Nevada and the department for moving forward on this. We often talk about, the need for access to nature in rural ways, and having a facility like this, which, is going to provide better access for the public, so close to, where many of our tourists go, is going to be critically important. And I think that elevating the opportunity as well to provide housing for rangers is just paramount. As we all know, it's best when you can have people on site that can do the operations and maintenance, close to where they're living. We obviously want to have them have privacy for their families, but accessibility is huge, and in particular in this area, as others have pointed out, where as a safety concern, having staff on site is going to be critically important. So I just want to thank the department for moving forward with this project, and I'm looking forward to actually taking a hike up there once we get all this opened up.
Thanks, Belinda. Not seeing any other questions or comments, I'm actually looking for two motions on this item. The first motion I'm looking for is to approve the required findings, including a finding of no significant effect as shown in attachment A. Thank you. We have a motion. Can we please call the roll?
Ms. Alding,
Yes.
Mr. Bass,
Yes.
Ms. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Conrad-Zeta,
Yes.
Ms. Hill, Ms. Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Keycapper,
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Rice,
Yes.
Mr. Henigman,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Loomer,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, motion passes.
Thank you. And the second motion I'm looking for is to approve the proposed project subject to the conditions contained in the draft permit as shown in attachment B. Thank you. We have a motion. Can we please call the roll again?
Ms. Alding,
Yes.
Mr. Bass,
Yes.
Ms. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Conrad-Zeta,
Yes.
Ms. Hill, Ms. Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Keycapper,
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Rice,
Yes.
Mr. Henigman,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Loomer,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, motion passes.
Thank you. Let's move on to our next agenda item. This is agenda item 8, public hearings. 8A is the amendments to chapter 31 of the TRPA Code of Ordinances, table 31-3-2, that would remove the 1 acre minimum lot size requirement for accessory dwelling units or ADUs in Nevada. Information on this item can be found on page 221. And Michelle Brown, if you could please present for staff when you're ready.
Madam Chair, this is John Hester. I wanted to kind of cue this up while staff's getting ready.
Please.
And if you don't mind, I kind of want to make an introduction to 8A and B together because they're interrelated. It's two topics or two items with three topics. So the first topic is the ADU size in TRPA's code. And the point I want to make there is previously the state of California recognized that having a lot size minimum was giving preference to large lot development, and years ago changed the requirement in California, and we changed our requirement on the California side. In 2025, the Nevada legislature passed AB 396. It excludes the Tahoe Basin, but it opens up all residential areas to accessory dwelling units without lot size requirements, and then gives the local governments, enables the local governments to set the design standards that they want. So from our perspective, the first item does three things. It addresses the 1 acre lot size bias towards large lot, which is good to remove because we don't want to use up more land for the same unit in the basin. It also allows the local governments, in this case, Washoe County and Douglas County, to address what they want to do in terms of design standards for ADUs at the local level, closer to their communities through their area plans, which is item B. And it creates regional consistency. So we think item A is very important because it enables local governments to do what they need to do essentially under their state laws, even though Tahoe is specifically excluded in the Nevada legislation. Item B really has two items. One is essentially, as you know, in December 2023, when you adopted phase 2 of the housing elements, it dealt with height, density, coverage, and requirements for deed restricted housing. That's in our code and that applies. The local governments were given time to either adopt that into their area plans or, if they preferred, to come up with alternative standards that had the same cost reduction effect on housing development for deed restricted housing. South Lake Tahoe did come up with some different provisions. Douglas County, Placer County, others have decided to adopt it into their area plans. Washoe County did the same thing, and that's what they've submitted to us. So it really is more of a check the box part. One part of item B is checking the box. They've done what they're required to do and decided not to take a different option. The second part of item 3 is some changes they propose to make to their area plan. Those are listed in the item by parking requirements, lot width and setback, modify some of the use categories, the lot size for ADUs, hence the item A, and why they're related, and then some of the uses in the Ponderosa Ranch and Crystal Bay area. So it's really two items that are interrelated, but I wanted to give you that context because I think you can see the importance of having consistent ADU requirements basin-wide, and you can see why that is really just them checking the box on the phase 2 stuff. So I'm happy to answer any questions about my comments, or if not, turn it over to Michelle and Kat.
Director Settlemeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to get the record clear. So again, the Nevada legislature passed, was it AB 396? Which basically dictated statewide that a county no longer can dictate a lot size on an accessory dwelling unit, correct?
What it did, and it excluded the Tahoe Basin. What it said is, if you do not develop your own standards, then ADUs are allowed in every place that you have residential units allowed. So,
regardless of lot size.
Right. It didn't, as far as I know, it didn't address lot size. I don't know all the specifics, but I know the community I live in has now adopted an ADU ordinance with those kinds of things in it, architectural consistency and all of that. So the legislature said to the locals, do this, right. And you do it the way you want your community to do it, which is very similar to kind of what California did a few years ago. Hope that answers your question.
It does very much. It might be a thought to maybe ask one of the Douglas County commissioners what they did.
Thank you. I see Ms. Lane and Wes. Mr. Rice, were you also reaching for your microphone?
I have a little problem with this. We have not had the ability to discuss this and to take a vote on it. And we have many people who live in the basin who do not like the idea of ADUs at all. Number one, for the evacuation in the event of a forest fire, the density problems. I'm uncomfortable voting for this at this time because we haven't had a chance at the commission level to investigate and take a look at the ordinances involved. And I would hate to dictate to my constituents how they're going to live their lives. And if the doghouse next door is going to become a person house next door. So that's my comment.
And sorry, Ms. Lane, I know you had your hand up, but I think Ms. Reagan has a direct response to Mr. Rice. My apologies for that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Julie Reagan here, TRPA Executive Director. A couple things. We do have a short presentation from Michelle that I think will answer Mr. Rice's question. But just to be really clear, Douglas County Board of County Commission would still have to take an action through your area plan to enable this to apply in your jurisdiction. So what we are doing in this allows the opportunity from the regional standpoint, but ADUs on parcels smaller than 1 acre in Douglas still could not go forward until the county commission takes action on their area plan. And so why don't we answer Ms. Lane's question and then we can.
Can I add one other point? John Hester here. And it applies to Clark and Washoe County in a list of cities. It does not apply to Douglas, the AB 396. And it's enabling West, so it doesn't require you to do anything.
And a point of order from Director Settlemeyer?
Not really a point of order, it's a point of more of information, because in reading AB 396, it is a mandate only to local ordinances of cities over 60,000 population and counties over 100,000 population to adopt said ordinances in the smaller rural counties, which arguably there's a question that this is a pop cap and pop caps are illegal, but that's a whole different discussion.
Well, and again, all we're doing is getting out of the way and enabling you to have that discussion. We're not saying you have to do anything, but if you want to go below 1 acre, you can.
Ms. Lane, and then we'll get to staff. Thank you.
I'll hold my question because it might get answered in the presentation.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear that this is an enabling section and not a you will section. Because I'm not going there. Anyway, thank you.
That's correct.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and members of the board. My name is Michelle Brown, and I'm a long-range planner with TRPA. I'm here today to seek approval from the governing board on an amendment to Chapter 31 of the TRPA Code of Ordinances. This item can be found on page 221 of your packet. The code amendment is requesting the removal of the 1 acre minimum parcel size required to construct an ADU in Nevada jurisdictions within the Tahoe Basin. This code amendment is identical to the current TRPA ADU regulations in the California side of the basin. And should this amendment be adopted, it would bring and establish policy consistency region-wide. Next slide, please. To provide some context and how we arrived at bringing this item to the board today, started back in 2021 as part of the Tahoe Living Strategic Initiative. TRPA staff brought forward a code amendment package that included this removal of the 1 acre parcel size for ADUs. At the time, the state of California had already adopted legislation that allowed ADUs on residential parcels on any size. At the request of some board members at that time, the Nevada jurisdictions maintain the 1 acre minimum lot size in order to allow for some time for discussion and analysis of regulations and ADU uses at the local level. And ultimately, the governing board adopted this code amendment only for the California side. Next slide, please. This slide here explains and shows the existing regulations regarding the parcel size for ADUs and any proposed changes in Nevada jurisdictions. As you can see on the top left, the top row, far right, Washoe County is proposing the removal of this 1 acre parcel size for ADUs in their Tahoe area plan, which they have also included in their amendment package that you will hear in more detail with the next agenda item today. Douglas County is maintaining the 1 acre minimum parcel size for ADUs and has not proposed any changes at this time. Next slide, please. So in summary, this code amendment promotes regional plan goals and policies that support housing options and advance transportation objectives. It also establishes policy consistency region-wide by aligning the current TRPA ADU regulations in all jurisdictions in the basin. It also maintains development limitations by requiring any ADU project to obtain a development right and to comply with TRPA land coverage, height, and other development and code sections. In closing, I'd like to mention that we are bringing this code amendment back for the Nevada jurisdictions to open up the possibilities for the next action item, as well as any future actions that may come to the board, and open the benefits for their ability to open up ADUs on smaller than 1 acre parcels. Next slide, please. So before we move into questions, I just want to mention that as of 5 p.m. yesterday, we did receive 2 public comments on this item. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Lane.
So my question is there not also a restriction on the percent of your lot that you can build on? Like, isn't there a 30% restriction?
Yeah, so our coverage requirements in our code still apply with no changes. So for example, many parcels in the basin can build up to 30% as their sort of base allowable, and that would still apply. And ADUs would still need to be within that amount.
Anyone else in the room? Otherwise, Mr. Kekeffer has his hand up. Cody, go ahead in the room.
Yeah, I'm just curious the setbacks on ADUs. I see they can be up to 1,200 square feet. Is that right?
So the setbacks are, we delegate setback regulations to the local jurisdiction. So I'll actually let Kat get into that during the next agenda item, because there are some changes to that. The size of an ADU is also dictated by like California state law. So in California, you can build up to 1,200 square feet. In Nevada, there is no size limit. And I'll again defer to Kat to correct me if that's not incorrect, or if that's incorrect.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kekeffer.
Thank you. There had been some discussion about making sure there was consistency across the basin, but the consistency is not really about ADUs themselves. The consistency from TRPA's perspective is allowing the local jurisdictions to make this choice. Is that correct?
Michelle Brown for the record. Oh, yes, that is correct. Excuse me, John. Yeah, this is merely bringing all the jurisdictions into the same alignment with this code amendment, and there is nothing tied to any development project or at the local level. This is simply a regional approach to the code amendments to bring them into consistency across.
Okay, so really just empowering local governments and local elected officials to make more decisions.
This is John Hester. That's right. And Mr. Kekeffer, that is consistent with what we've been trying to do since 2012, when we enabled area plans and gave local governments at their requests and at the board agreed to do area plans, work closer with their communities and delegate permitting to them. So this is continuing along that path.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Aldine?
Thank you. John, at some point, when these ADUs are constructed, it would be nice to bring back some visuals of what they look like, you know, how they've complied with our rules and regs. You know, I think there's a concern because many people haven't seen these ADUs built and incorporated onto an existing lot with an existing home. So I think that might help to address some of those concerns if we have some visual representation of what the ADUs look like from a design standpoint and how the homeowner or the landowner has complied with our rules and regs.
Noted, we will do that.
Thank you. And if I see no further discussion, I am looking for two motions on this agenda item. The first motion would be a motion to approve the required findings, attachment A, including a finding of no significant effect for adoption of an amendment to chapter 31 of the Code of Ordinances. We have a motion. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Miss Alding,
Yes.
Mr. Bass. Circle back, Miss Bennett,
No.
Miss Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Miss Hill, Miss Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Keykeeper,
Yes.
Miss Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Rice,
No.
Mr. Henigman,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Miss Lane,
Yes.
Miss Loomer,
Yes.
Miss Williamson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, that motion passes.
And the second I'm looking for, the second motion would be a motion to ordinance 2025 blank attachment B, amending ordinance 87-9 as amended to adopt amendments to chapter 31 of the TRPA Code of Ordinances.
So moved.
Thank you. Maria, can you please call the roll on that motion?
Miss Alding,
Yes.
Mr. Bass, Miss Bennett,
I'm a no.
that no. Thank you. Miss Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Miss Hill, Miss Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Keykeeper,
Yes.
Miss Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Rice,
Yes.
Mr. Henigman,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Miss Lane,
Yes.
Miss Loomer,
Yes.
Miss Williamson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 8B, which is amendments to the Washoe County Tahoe Area Plan to conform with TRPA's Phase 2 housing amendments, update bicycle parking requirements, modify lot width and setback requirements, modify use categories and permitting requirements, remove minimum parcel size for accessory dwelling units, and update allowable uses in the Ponderosa Ranch and Crystal Bay regulatory zones. Information on this item can be found on page 259 of your packets. Mr. Hester.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, this has two parts. The first is essentially a checking the box that they have included the phase 2 changes to height, density, parking, and coverage that you all adopted already. Those apply anyway, but we prefer that the local governments include those in their area plans or their alternative. And the second part is these other amendments to things like parking setbacks, width, bike parking requirements, lot width and setback, and those other things listed in the agenda item. And we have Michelle on our staff and Kat from Washoe County staff here to present. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Again, my name is Michelle Brown, and I'm a long-range planner with TRPA. I'm joined here today with Kat Oakley from Washoe County, and she will be here to present on the proposed amendments. But first, I would like to provide a little brief introduction. Next slide, please. Just to cover some of the aspects of area plans and how they were first introduced as part of the 2012 regional plan update. They are an important component for implementation for the regional plan. They bring the regional plan concepts and strategies down to a local level, and they allow adaptation for those regulations to fit at a local context. This map here is to show you where the boundaries lie for the Tahoe area plan in Washoe County. It essentially encompasses all of Washoe County jurisdiction within the Tahoe Basin. Next slide, please. The proposed amendments bring the Washoe Tahoe area plan into conformance with the previously adopted regional plan amendments, such as the implementation of affordable housing by incorporating the phase 2 housing amendments that were adopted in 2023. The proposed amendment or the proposed changes that are also included in the amendment package include the removal of the 1 acre minimum parcel size to construct an ADU, which would also further housing and transportation goals and policies of the regional plan. Other proposed changes that are unique to this plan area with the development of town centers and by decreasing minimum density size and the variety of technical cleanups are also included. Next slide. And with that, I'll pass it off to Kat Oakley.
Hi there, I'm Kat Oakley, a senior planner with Washoe County. It's great to be here to present this package of updates to our area plan. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background on our area plan. It was adopted in 2021 after extensive public outreach at that time. It includes both the master plan level documents, so policy and vision type statements, and then also our implementing regulation, which is Articles 220 and 220.1 of our development code. And so this is a focused update. It's not a reopening of that overall vision. It focuses on first conformance with the phase 2 housing amendments, and then some other code changes intended to support housing affordability. And as was mentioned, some other refinements, cleanups, and just general improvements to our code. And for context as well, this is generally speaking, Incline Village and Crystal Bay is the area that our plan covers. Next slide, please. So to start with the amendments that are focused on housing affordability, as was mentioned, we are proposing to opt in to the phase 2 housing amendments. So adopting all those required incentives for deed restricted housing as it relates to coverage, height, parking, and any other aspects. We're also proposing some proactive changes that we think could help with the housing affordability issues in our region. So first, allowing 100% deed restricted multifamily housing in the Ponderosa Ranch regulatory zone. You can see that zone highlighted in blue on the map on the screen. And that's an area where currently multifamily housing is not currently allowed in those areas outside of the special area in that zone. And so we're proposing to only allow housing there if it is 100% deed restricted to create that opportunity for those types of housing we want to see in a place where we know there's some demand or some interest in building it and has proximity to employment centers like the Hyatt. There are also other various changes proposed to remove barriers to housing affordability that I'm not going to get into in detail, but they're in the staff report and I'm happy to answer any questions about them. Next slide, please. Next, the other bigger change that you've already heard about is some changes to our accessory dwelling unit regulations. So we're looking at making these changes because ADUs, they provide certain advantages when it comes to housing and affordability. They are compatible with single family development, provide flexibility for multi-generational living that we would like to enable. And then those things like allowing opportunities to downsize without leaving the neighborhood, things of that nature, which is why we're looking at making this change. And the big change that the last action just enabled is to remove our existing minimum lot size of 1 acre to allow the development of ADUs on smaller parcels. Since we're doing that, we're also proposing to establish a minimum size of 1,200 square feet for ADUs on those parcels smaller than 1 acre, and then allowing detached ADUs that are under 500 square feet and under 12 feet tall to be 5 feet from the rear and side property lines. That aligns with our current regulations for accessory structures and is kind of essentially trying to utilize that junior ADU idea that doesn't quite exist in Nevada, but to create some flexibility for smaller lots when they want to build that smaller ADU. And other ADUs, just for context, would need to meet the standard setbacks. Washoe County prohibits short-term rentals in ADUs in the Tahoe Basin, which is one of the reasons why we feel ready and that it's appropriate to make this change now. And I also just want to mention, as this differs from California, only one ADU is allowed per parcel. Next slide, please. Next, several code clarifications and improvements are proposed. Again, I'm not going to go into huge detail. I can answer any questions, but generally speaking, those are amendments to fix typographical errors, improve clarity where we can, just sort of possible improvements we've identified implementing this regulation over the years. We're also proposing a couple changes to carry over code provisions that were erroneously and accidentally excluded when we originally adopted our area plan in 2021. And then some other improvements related to setbacks, permitting requirements, minimum density, temporary uses, split zoning, and bicycle parking. And all details I can answer questions about. Next slide, please. We, of course, did an initial environmental checklist that determined that there was a finding of no significant effect was appropriate and determined that all required findings could be made. Next slide, please. I do want to just highlight our public outreach process briefly. We did 2 rounds of public outreach for this update. The first was in December, January, a year ago now, and then a draft review round to get feedback on the draft that we created. The figure on the right hand of the slide just highlights the participation we saw. So we contacted many stakeholders, had 5 meetings, over 70 participants, and then also a lot of online survey responses, which was really great. And the majority of policy-related comments we received throughout the process were in opposition to the TRPA Phase 2 housing amendments. I'm sure you all have read a lot of those comments as well. And the concerns really were about impacts to community character, infrastructure and evacuation, and then concerns about achievable housing, that definition, and the enforcement of deed restrictions. Next slide, please. So we did try to respond to that input where we could. We explored an alternative to the Phase 2 housing amendments with TRPA. Ultimately, it was determined that that alternative was not technically sufficient. And so that is why we decided to go down the path of opting in. We also created some clear standards for the request and granting of a parking modification to create some more transparency and consistency in that process, try to allay some of those concerns about parking. And then, of course, we did hear support for the need for workforce housing. And so we proposed changes, other changes to try to support workforce housing. I also just want to mention that in terms of a lot of the concerns about the impacts of development and such, it's worth noting that TRPA's growth management system coverage, all those rules continue to apply with the adoption of these amendments. Next slide, please. That's all I have. As I said, I'm happy to answer any of the more technical questions or any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Aldine.
Thank you, Kat. My question relates to the section on 271 of our packet having to do with public input response. One of the things you didn't mention in your presentation was the fact that apparently Washoe County Emergency Management recently received a donation to fund an evacuation study. Can you give us a general timeline on when that's likely to begin?
Yes, I can. So that study, as you said, we did receive a donation for it and it has kicked off recently. And so what's happened so far is that emergency management has gotten a contractor to do wildfire modeling and evacuation modeling. And so that's underway, and the public outreach is underway, forming those evacuation areas basically for the model. And so it is underway. What that process will entail is doing a model for wildfire movement and evacuation. And then once that is complete, they do anticipate also updating their evacuation study. So it's underway. From my recollection of the timeline, it should be completed next year. And then at that time, once they are able to update the evacuation study, of course, if there is anything that should impact the area plan, we'll be able to take that into consideration once we have that information. So it's exciting that it's underway.
So are you anticipating, depending on the output or the outcome of the evacuation study, that you may be coming back to further amend your plan area statement or your plan area?
It's hard to say without knowing what it says. I do know that really the focus of that evacuation study is from the perspective of emergency management. It's about how they can manage their evacuations and deploy resources in such a way that improves the efficiency and success of evacuations. And that's really the information they're trying to get. And so I can't speak to whether there will be information that is, informs the Tahoe area plan. And it would be up to of course, the direction of the elected officials. So I can't really say, but of course, we do try to update our larger, our master plans once every 5 years. And so we do periodically update things. And when we do, consider all the information we have at that time available to us.
And if appropriate, I'm assuming, obviously it would be desirable to have a basin-wide evacuation plan, which we've been talking about for a long time. We've got obviously consultants for TRPA, people from a variety of different government agencies who are, and I'm assuming maybe Julie or John, you can give us an update on those efforts. You hate to create these plans in isolation because we have just so many roads and many of them interconnect. And so doing this in a uniform, consistent manner would certainly be more desirable from a planning standpoint. And from the standpoint of having a plan that really addresses these ongoing concerns about evacuation and how we could best, serve the people that are within our jurisdiction.
Sure, I can give a quick update. As you mentioned, we have what's called a Protect grant, and it's to look at improving transportation resiliency for whenever an event, not just fires, but floods, snow events, earthquakes, those kind of things happen. To be clear, we will not be doing any update to evacuation planning ourselves, but it may inform what the emergency service providers do. What we will be looking at is things like, are there evacuation routes that we could do improvements to? And there's improvements like infrastructure, like maybe making a culvert wider so that a greater flood could be handled without having to close a road, or maybe thinning the forest so that if there's a fire, it doesn't impact that roadway. But we'll be looking at infrastructure improvements, both natural and hard infrastructure, to help with evacuation and other events like that. The other concepts that may end up amending things like area plans, and we may do this regionally, is, as you know, the Tahoe Basin was subdivided prior to 1987. And any of you who've worked in local governments know when you do a subdivision now, the fire service providers always insist on 2 ways in and out. Lots of places we don't have that. So one of the retrofits that we might figure out how to do, either through EIP projects or mitigations or some combination, is putting in additional accesses into neighborhoods. So those are the kinds of things that will come out of the Protect grant work, but that probably won't be back to you for a couple of years with code amendments and so forth. But we do plan on having the consultants in the spring of 2026 come lay out the plan for the work. In the middle of their project, come give you a status update. And of course, at the end, if there's code amendments or plan amendments, they'll obviously be coming, they'll come to you for that.
And John, all of the jurisdictions will have a seat at the table, I presume.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And all the fire protection districts and all the law enforcement organizations.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Oh, Mr. Bass.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious, there's 2 parcels here that are applicant initiated amendments. One of them is a 2.34 acre with going from 4 to 6. Is that going to be an affordable or achievable development?
So there's no requirement in that special area for deed restricted housing. What's allowed right now is that single family, multifamily housing, and the change is the increase in density. So it's not, there's no particular development proposed at this time. So I can't speak to exactly what it might be.
Right. And so, and then the same, there's a 5.75 acre, which about, I don't know, a fifth of the parcel is in the proper zone, the residential zone, and we're moving the rest of it in. And again, is that, are we doing that to create affordable housing, or do we not know the development?
So that parcel is a parcel that's currently developed with a single family home that was developed as a summer home on the conservation portion of that parcel back in the day, is now used as on more of a year-round basis. And so that change is really just intended to bring that home into conformance. only single family, like one unit of single family housing is allowed on that parcel. So we don't anticipate any future development on that piece of land.
Okay, and again, it's not that I even oppose that those things happen. I think sometimes we get looked at like we're trying to do these housing things, but then we have these little things in here that are maybe not what is under the lens of affordable housing. And so I wonder, like, with those things, is that not better to come back individually rather than trying to loop it into something that we're changing this code for housing and to do affordable housing, but here are these two parcels that are not under that. And I feel like that's sometimes the public's perception around that we're doing something that we're saying we're not doing, if you follow what I mean.
Sure. And I will say, so our planning commission and county commission considered those items separately. We bundled them together at the regional level because we were encouraged to do that for to consolidate it at this point in the process. But our local decision makers did actually consider each of those discreetly and make an individual decision on each of them. If that helps.
Yeah, and Mr. Bass, it's John Hester again, if I may, we've encouraged the local governments, and in this case, Washoe County, not just to do housing work in their area plans, but make their area plan their plan for their part of the basin that's in their jurisdiction. So if it needs to address other issues, we encourage them to do that. So that's part of the reason you see other amendments.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that there's, as we all know, we have a lot of public that's saying we're doing this for other reasons than housing. And I think sometimes when those items are in the approval that we're looking to do for housing, it may not, and I get the intention of like, let's get a lot done because this is a big process and takes a lot. And I respect that 100%. I think sometimes if we think about those things that may be giving us those optics, it could be good.
Ms. Bennett?
To go along the same way that Mr. Bass was, I will be voting no. The secretary wanted me to just say that this is not enough for the workers in the basin and that we need to do more for affordable housing and workforce housing. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Looking around, Ms. Gustafson? Oh, nope. Okay. All right. With that, I am looking for two motions on this item. The first motion would be a motion to approve the required findings as set forth in attachment B, including a finding of no significant effect for adoption of the Washoe County Tahoe area plan amendments as described in the staff summary and shown in attachment C. Do I have that motion? Thank you. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Aldine?
Yes.
Mr. Bass?
No.
Ms. Bennett?
No.
Ms. Conrad Seda?
Yes.
Ms. Hill? Ms. Faustinos? Ms. Faustinos, can you hear us?
It looks like she might be frozen.
She's frozen. We'll circle back. Mr. Keykeper?
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Henigman?
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Loomer?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Faustinos, can you hear us? She's just gonna. Looks like she's dropped now. She may be having issues. Okay, Madam Chair, that motion does pass.
Thank you. I'm just going to turn to council quick. If Belinda jumps back on, do we need to take that vote again, or since it passed, are we okay?
The motion passed. I think it's fine to just proceed. She can vote on the next motion if she wants, but it's we can see when we get there. Yeah.
Thank you. The second motion I'm looking for is a motion to adopt ordinance 2025-blank as shown in attachment D, amending ordinance 2021-06 as previously amended to incorporate the Washoe County Tahoe area plan amendments. Would someone like to make that motion?
I've got you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Brooke. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Aldine?
Yes.
Mr. Bass?
No.
Ms. Bennett?
No.
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Ms. Hill, Ms. Faustinos, Ms. Faustinos, if you can hear us, I'll circle back. Mr. Keycapper,
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Rice,
Yes.
Mr. Henigman,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Loomer,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Faustinos, can you hear us? She has her hand raised. Okay, thank you. Okay. Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 8C, which is amendments to chapter 84 of the TRPA Code of Ordinances, section 8443F, regarding standards for non-conforming piers containing rock cribbing and safety elements for all piers. Information on this item can be found on page 301. Tiffany, whenever you're ready, please.
All right, I think I'm set to roll. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Today I'm here to present and seek your approval for some proposed code amendments for expansions of certain non-conforming piers and allowance of safety elements for all piers. We can go to the next slide. Shore zone topics can tend to be pretty dense. I'm going to try my best to keep this simple, but this is a long time coming. So as I said, we're seeking amendments to chapter 84 of the code, which deals specifically with shore zone structures. So I don't bury the lead too much. We're specifically talking about rock crib piers. That is the non-conforming pier structure that we're talking about. And rock crib piers are similar, but do not always look like the image that's up on this screen right now. So you have a visual as we go along here. So the proposed amendments are intended to incentivize environmental improvements for certain non-conforming piers and to allow safety elements for all piers. From today's discussion, you can expect a brief refresh on the shoreline plan because that is always fun. We're also going to talk about the amendments and the environmental analysis and some of the environmental benefits associated with the removal of rock cribbing. I do want to take a minute to highlight the project team. Got a lot of support from our legal folks, Graham St. Michel and Marcia Birch in particular. We have a pretty stellar shore zone group of planners in-house that know all things shore zone. So that would be Matt Miller, Brandy McMahon, and Zach Davis. So I just want to really thank them for the support because it's not always easy. And then we talked to a lot of stakeholders through this process. Like I said, it's a long time coming. So as we went along the way, we spoke and reached out to a lot of planning consultants, the Tahoe Lakefront Owners Association, Jan Briscoe, and the League to Save Lake Tahoe. So all of those folks have been kept abreast as we've gone along. Next slide, please. All right, so the fun part, just a refresh on the shoreline plan. You all, the governing board, adopted the shoreline plan in 2018. And for those of you who were around and remember, it was a highly collaborative, consensus-based process. It was very intense. And we did that on purpose because we wanted to see it succeed. When we adopted the plan in 2018, it was, I think we had 7 failed attempts before that to update the previous plan from 1987. So it was a big deal. Like I said, we wanted to see it succeed. So all the intensive effort, all the meetings, all of the public outreach and workshops that you see up on the screen, it was worth it. And now staff has been implementing that plan for the past 7 years. And in that time frame, we have learned a whole lot. Some of us in the agency still live and breathe shore zone on a daily basis. So some of us, John Hester does not. And one of the biggest things that we have learned as we've been implementing the plan is that there are some areas where we just don't quite have the right incentives in place. So we need to do better at that. We need to have better incentives to replace the legacy development with development that better aligns with our thresholds. And when I say legacy development, some of these rock crib piers were developed before the existence of TRPA. They go back to the 30s, 40s, 50s. They're very old structures. All right, next slide, please. Quickly, the overarching goal of the shoreline plan was to enhance the recreational experience along Lake Tahoe shores while protecting the environment and responsibly planning for the future. The shoreline plan specifically includes regulations for shoreline structures, marinas, boat ramps, buoys, and piers that support water-dependent recreation at Lake Tahoe, and that does include water-dependent recreation on private property. Next slide, please. So for context, there are some major elements of the shoreline plan that I think are going to just help us all with this discussion today. The plan limited the construction of new piers on the lake to 128 piers over the life of the plan. That's not very many. It's 12 every other year. So the ability to get a new pier is, relatively slim. But there are quite a few existing piers out on the lake. At the time of the plan adoption, I think the inventory was approximately 738. There are slightly more now. So it's really important to understand what can I do with those existing piers. You can modify it or you can expand it. And those are two very distinct, very discrete activities. So a modification can occur if you are achieving an incremental environmental gain. So for example, if you have a fixed catwalk and you want to change that out to an adjustable catwalk, you can do that if maybe you are, decreasing the visible mass. That's the environmental gain. For expansions, it's actually pretty limited what you can do to expand an existing pier. You basically, if you have a non-conforming pier, you have to bring all of those non-conforming elements into conformance with our current development standards in order to expand it. In most situations, this is not going to be possible and it's not going to be desirable. And this is one of those situations where we see a pretty, the incentives for getting rid of these non-conforming elements is pretty weak. And this has been communicated to us by applicants, consultants who work on these types of projects all the time, and also the types of peer applications that we actually get. So we're seeing this in our application load. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the environmental impacts associated with piers, with rock cribbing? Why would we want to see them be reconstructed to include open piling? The environmental impacts that were analyzed in the initial environmental checklist are up on this screen. Rather than read through them verbatim, I think they're better demonstrated with some photos of some existing rock crib piers. So we can move to the next slide. Okay, this is a rock crib pier. For all of these, I'll show the view from the lake out on or to the right, and then the aerial image, which also is super helpful on the left. So you can see this is an existing rock crib pier. And just to kind of walk you through this, this is a solid structure that starts on the shoreline, extends out to the lake, and has an L shape at the end. So this is solid rock, that is encased by wood piling. Sometimes it's steel, just depends. But what you see here is because there's a solid structure there, there's no natural water flow along the shoreline or in the near shore. And if you look at the aerial image on the left, there's going to be some water stagnation that is also incurred because there's not going to be as much wave action. So when you have more stagnant water conditions and you have these collections of rocks, this is just a breeding ground for potential AIS habitat, which we obviously do not want to see. It also affects sediment deposition near the shore zone, which will be better demonstrated in the next photo, and also impedes the fish movement, which is really important if you have spawning habitat in these areas or a feed and cover habitat. Next slide, please. So this is a very large, what we call a complex pier. It has several non-conforming elements, but I think what's really telling about this structure is if you look at the aerial, and I wish I had a pointer, but you can kind of see the shoreline. There's a lot of sand and sand deposition on the top of the pier. And then below the pier, I guess to the south of the pier, you see, the shoreline just, it goes much further in upland. So you see where that sand deposition is, that's where the any wave action does push sand. It's not a natural area of shoreline, and that has been created by this massive obstruction that is in the lake. Next slide, please.
You didn't comment on the color.
Good point. That's a very good point. That would be a non-conforming color. I hope that might be the least of the worries on that one, but so with this rock cribbing, it's kind of hard to see, but there's actually a slip in here and it's encased with rock cribbing. There's no water movement happening in there. There's not a lot of wave action. Again, stagnant water conditions coupled with collections of rocks is going to create AIS habitat. And then also, if you just look at the image on the left, the aerial image, you can see the footprint that these take up as well. Next slide, just a few more examples. I think this example just shows, there's open piling on this pier closer to shore that does open up the shoreline for water flow and movement, which is good. But you still have the rock cribbing at the pier head. And because of the way the sun is hitting this photo, you can see the visible mass that's created. And that impacts our scenic quality, which is also important, also one of our thresholds. And next slide. The images on the left and the right, the structures on the left and the right are rock crib piers. So again, you can see the footprint that they take up, the potential impacts to navigation and safety. And then the structure in the middle is actually a relatively new conforming pier. So I just wanted to give that last image. Next slide. So I just showed you a lot of existing rock crib piers that are out on the lake, but there was one project in particular that served as a catalyst for moving these amendments forward for your consideration. And we're just going to call this the Thompson Appeal. I described this at length in the staff report, but TRPA denied a project for a non-conforming pier and the applicant appealed that denial. The purpose of bringing this to you today is not to rehash the appeal. It's just a kind of a demonstration. And actually, if we can go to the next slide, Tracy. The image on the left is the existing structure. And what the applicant proposed to do was to reconstruct this pier with open piling. They wanted to add additional length within our standards. They wanted to add a boat lift, again, consistent with our standards, but they wanted to retain some non-conforming elements, primarily the width of the pier head. And it was the retention of these non-conforming elements that led us to not be able to approve the project, because you have to bring, right now under today's code, you have to bring the structure 100% into conformance. So I think this project really highlights a missed opportunity for incentives. If we can move these types of structures closer to conformance without blowing any of our existing standards, blowing past any of our existing standards, that potentially is a win for the environment. So next slide, please. Just one last picture of that project or the existing structure. Next slide. All right, so just a little bit of background on what led us here. Staff we workshopped this issue at July's Regional Planning Committee. And the purpose behind workshopping that issue is to get some ideas to kind of gauge the appetite of whether or not we can move forward with some incentives, if that's something that we can do. And the resulting RPC direction back to staff was to explore a code amendment that would allow for the expansion of some non-conforming piers. And the idea was to use the guardrails that you see up on this screen to consider a potential code amendment. The bullets in black were fairly straightforward to incorporate into the code language. So I'll just go through those quickly. The first one being that eligibility would be limited to only those pier structures with a rock cribbing component. So that's first criteria. Skipping a couple down, the next bullet in black includes safety elements for all piers. So piers should be allowed to be safe. So the inclusion of handrails, swim ladders, etc. The expansion should be limited to an additional boat lift within our current allowances, or additional pier length, again, within our current allowances if there is a net reduction in visible mass. Next bullet, the resulting pier structure square footage, lake bottom disturbance in parentheses, must remain the same or decrease. So like I said, those were fairly easy to incorporate into the code language. So I'm not gonna go too much deeper into those, but the bullets in red do warrant a little bit more discussion. So the next slide, please. So the shoreline plan EIS established development caps for all shore zone development. These are caps in the numbers of new moorings, new piers, and new boat ramps. And it's really important to mention that these code amendments do not change these development caps. Those remain in place. The amendments also ensure that projects would remain consistent with or move closer to all development standards. More specifically, projects that might take advantage of these code amendments would be allowed to add additional length, again, up to current development standards, add a boat lift consistent with development standards. And as a result, we get some good benefits, like the removal of rock cribbing, reduction in potential AIS habitat, reduction in visible mass, and then again, trend toward conformance with all other development standards. And the environmental result would be potential improvements in land and water quality, fish habitat, and scenic quality. And this is a prime example of adaptive management. We had the shoreline plan. We've been implementing that for some time now. We've had the ability to learn from that and see what kinds of projects are coming through. And now we're adjusting to make sure we have the right incentives in place. And so we would actually see some really great environmental improvements from the removal of rock cribbing. Next slide. And in case I didn't hammer it home enough, in the beginning of the presentation, this would result in the reduction of AIS habitat. Again, when you replace rock cribbing with open piling piers, the natural flow of water in the near shore is promoted, and you get to return that to a somewhat natural state. Littoral processes are restored. That is a win for the reduction of AIS habitat. Next slide. A week ago, the APC heard these amendments and recommended approval of them. And that was just a week ago. It feels like it was forever ago. They also, some members of the APC did express an interest in the governing board revisiting potential restrictions on the use of plastic composites like Trex stacking for piers, perhaps during the next work plan prioritization for the agency. So I did just want to mention that. It's not a specific recommendation because it wasn't agendized as such, and then I think that's all I have, and I'm happy to take questions and comments.
Thank you. Ms. Aldine?
I want to thank staff. I feel responsible, at least in part, for this reevaluation. And I feel your pain. Having been on this board since 2003, I muddled my way through a lot of meetings having to do with shoreline. And I know that every time the word shoreline comes into the conversation, everybody's having simultaneous flashbacks, you know. So I do appreciate all the time and effort you've spent to bring this forward. And I think it does achieve what we're looking for, and that is incremental progress toward meeting thresholds and environmental gains. But I had one question for you, Tiffany, on page 307, under paragraph 6. Not all of the, I'm wondering if we can amend the language, because not all of the items in that paragraph relate to safety. Removing non-conforming structures, I suppose in some cases could have a safety aspect, but I'm not sure that applies to rock crib piers. And then you have the addition of catwalks and things of that nature. I'm wondering if we can just say elements for all piers. The following improvements may be permitted to any legally existing pier, whether conforming or non-conforming. And that way, everything that's listed, you know, is consistent with being an element as opposed to a safety element, because not everything in the list is a safety element. It's just kind of a suggested change in wording.
I think I'd like to hear your take first, Tiffany, but then I'll jump in.
So I think as staff, we looked at those elements and think that they do promote safety. I don't think it's limited. We might not have captured all safety elements in what we included in the code. So perhaps if there's something that we haven't thought of, I'm not sure that could be included in that list. I'm not sure, but I think we as staff looked at all of those elements as safety, like, for example, additional pier height because of wind and wave action creates an additional, safety element for piers. So I don't know if there's maybe one you want to talk through in particular,
So
or
is it not related to, it's related to a catwalk, for example, is more of an accommodation to the user, right? And I suppose safety. If you fall off a catwalk as opposed to falling off a pier, you're probably will be, sustain less harm. Well, the only thing that when you say yes, the following safety improvements may be added, that doesn't really relate to removing a non-conforming structure. It's not an addition; it's an elimination.
That's correct. So I think it might be helpful to look at the inclusion of the safety elements as kind of a discrete bucket from the allowance for expansion for certain non-conforming piers. We wanted to allow any pier that is on the lake that is legally existing to be allowed to have these safety elements without the addition of those safety elements constituting an expansion, which has many more requirements. So again, allowing those safety elements for all piers, regardless of their non-conforming or conforming status, if they are legally existing, was the intent of those particular amendments.
Well, maybe what we can do is just remove added and say permitted.
Okay. I
for
think that would be
clarity's sake,
acceptable.
because you're not adding rock crib piers, you're eliminating them.
Right.
Right. Okay.
I think that's a fine edit there.
Thank you.
Maybe permitted.
Other questions or comments? Vince?
I'm very sad because I've always loved those piers, but I didn't know they were harmful. But I do paddle up and down the West Shore a lot, and what I've noticed is a lot of them are really large and hold several boats. In fact, one right near the Sunnyside that I go by all the time is where a historic property was divided, and their huge pier now has 3 or 4 families' boats in it. Are we just allowing one boat lift, or are we allowing kind of the same number as you'd be replacing? Because I think if we really need to get rid of them, then we should have the right incentives. And there's no way someone who's got 4 stalls right now is going to, rip this thing out to just get one. So are we going far enough in those cases, or is that just a bad idea?
So a couple comments to that. As a reminder, when we workshopped this issue at the Regional Planning Committee in July, the intent was to keep it very narrowly focused. And with the recognition that there probably are opportunities for other incentives, that the numbers of peers that this might actually apply to and incentivize people to reconstruct as open piling. You're probably not going to touch every rock crib pier out on the lake. I hope that answers your question. Just a reminder of just the limited scope that we were directed to work with in July. And then as far as the number of slips or moorings that are associated with these, I think it's helpful to look back at the Thompson example, because that pier has no boat lifts currently, and they have 2 mooring buoys. So they are within their allowance for their property. And so they would be allowed to convert 1 mooring to a boat lift and stay within their allowed number of moorings. If you already exceed your number of allowed moorings and you have those and you're paying the registration on them, and they are pre-72, and that's how TRPA looks at them, you are not allowed to get more than that. So it is only up to the allowances for your property. So yeah, if you have 4 slips, you don't get a boat lift on top of that. So that might not work as an incentive in those situations.
I guess I'm just curious, do we want them to? Because the ones I see are all much bigger than I mean, they're like the red one you showed, where, I mean, that thing's got a lot of boat capacity in it. I mean, if we want them to convert, should we look at that going forward? I understand now that it's not part of this, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think that's a good pickup on, potential opportunities for future incentives.
Madam Chair, may I just build on that? And Tiffany, first of all, thank you, Tiffany, because these are very complicated issues. You did a great job explaining the complexity in an easy to understand manner. So a great question from Member Henigman. I will say I'll quote one of the members of the Advisory Planning Commission. I want to thank the commission. They had a very robust meeting, one of the longest APC meetings of the year. And they spent a lot of time looking at this. And one of the members of the commission said, this is a great example of a big programmatic major policy shift in 2018 and implementing the new shoreline plan. The incentives we had, weren't enough. We're adapting, we're changing, we're bringing a recommendation. Doesn't mean it's going as far as it needs to go, but I think we were all kind of looking at it like 1/9 inning at a time. Let's try this. Let's see if we can get some additional, change on the landscape. And there will be some rock crib piers which we won't lose them. I mean, people love them, and to your point, they kind of make you have that nostalgic feel of old Tahoe. There may never be an opportunity to remove all of them, but if we can continue to move forward and where we have opportunities, use our structure and our regulatory system as a way to get some converted, we'll take that as a win. So just want to follow up. Thanks.
Ashley? Thanks, Ashley Conrad Sater, for the record. Yeah, I appreciate the iterative process and really appreciate the thorough presentation. So thank you. And the evidence of what rock cribbing actually is. So just a couple of things. One is, in the next iterative process, it would be interesting to think about incentives for using natural materials. And then maintenance requirements, because if you could add in some maintenance requirements, we would have fewer of those kind of rough looking structures, and that might provide enough of an incentive to make that conversion from rock cribbing to something else. So, just food for thought for future updates. I also wondered about incentives for removal. So if someone were to remove a pier, but because they couldn't at the time actually manage reconstruction, could they hold that right so that they had an opportunity to reconstruct it when they had the funds for natural materials and, a non-rock cribbed pier? So I guess those are just my questions, not necessarily for today, but going forward that the group could look at. Thanks.
Cindy? Thank you. Great job. I know that anything in the shore zone is beyond my pay grade here at the governing board. It is so complicated and there's so many parties involved, but really great to make that progress. Am I correct that when a new pier goes in with these, that public access is required at high water or for public access along the shoreline? Yeah.
Yes, in California. Mhm.
I really appreciate that as somebody who does like to walk along the beach, and those that have been replaced, we definitely have some in my neighborhood that need replacement. I hope they're listening and realizing they could benefit. But it really makes a difference to the public who otherwise are so limited in public access locations. And so that's a great incentive. We saw an example up there and I thought it was required, but I'm glad to hear it still is. Thank you.
Cody?
Yeah, that just brought up a question to me actually for piers that are not conforming with the ability to have shoreline access to crossover property. I mean, that's a California land use law that's very codified. So can we not, piers that are non-conforming that don't have a ladder to allow the public to cross, can we not make them do that based on the California land? I think that's who it is that manages the California Land Commission. Is that not something that we could require based on just law?
Yeah, I can take this one. So we have an MOU with the California State Lands Commission that ensures that anytime we receive an application for an activity in the shore zone, that we look at public access. So when somebody comes in to modify or expand or build a new pier, that's our opportunity to, and it is in the code and it is consistent with the MOU, that's our opportunity to require that public access, whether it's a ladder up and over, stairs up and over, or signage directing passage up and around. That's when we have the opportunity to do that. So the more of these rock crib piers that we can touch with these code amendments that might come in for a project, they're going to come in for a project and we're going to, include the requirement for public passage through the public trust in California.
Great. And then so with and I don't know the proper name for them, but they're the black floating, I'll just call them buoys that hold up a lot of the at-water level piers. Last year at Timber Cove, we had a bunch of them bust open with huge amounts of styrofoam that created an unbelievable mess. I'm still getting styrofoam out of the beach. Have we figured out how to outlaw those? Are those still allowed to be used? And have we got an inventory of how many of them currently exist?
I think a lot of those are part of the legacy development, that we deal with all the time. We don't permit floating pier structures that would be made out of that type of material. We do have provisions that would allow for floating pier extensions. But again, there's certain things that our code prohibits the use of and certain things that it doesn't. And those specific types of materials, I think, might be what the APC suggested that the governing board discuss as far as prioritizing in the next work plan.
Okay.
And if I may build on that, Tiffany, Julie Reagan here. If you'll recall, the Tahoe Keys Marina, we had a big discussion at the legal committee and the board adopted a settlement agreement. That was a huge discussion in that situation because they're replacing all of those with modern, practices that are much more environmentally beneficial. And so that came up. We are not permitting them going forward. But as you mentioned, and as Tiffany indicated, there are a lot of old structures that we're still trying to take an assessment of, and how can we build that into the future work plan? Because it's not an insignificant amount of work, because once you start going down the path of materials, Trex, we're not permitting new Trex decks now in terms of the new pier applications, but it's going back and looking and taking stock of, mooring materials, buoys, ropes. Like it's a very complicated topic. And so we totally appreciate it. We're trying to get plastics out of the lake. Like we all support that. And so we will revisit that in our next year work plan.
Great. Yeah, I just, for me, it's the plastics for sure. Plastics degrade, but the styrofoam that are inside those black things. And when we start to see, like last year, when we had the, you know, the tragic day on the lake on Timber Cove, it was like 8 foot storm surges. And I mean, it was unreal. And so I just feel like even in the Tahoe Keys, I think there has to be a better way to create buoyancy that doesn't use styrofoam, whether you have a completely sealed plastic container that's just full of air, but it's guaranteed to stay sealed. Just seems like something that we should really be on. And I don't know if it's even maybe a moratorium for those products until we figure out the policy that is right. But after what I watched, I just think it's incredibly important. I'm curious too with the commercial marinas. Where are we at with the 10 that were allowed in the shore zone? Have we permitted any new commercial marinas that were authorized?
No, no, and nor will we. The shoreline plan recognized essentially 13 public marinas, and no additional marinas would be allowed with the shoreline plan.
Okay, I thought it was authorizing 10 new ones, but they already exist. So that's what it basically kind of codified, that those can exist.
You might be thinking of the public health and safety piers. The plan also said each local jurisdiction had the opportunity to have a public health and safety pier, which is a separate provision. Right?
Okay. And then just my thoughts around, so these changes also will apply to public piers and public marinas as far as like being able to allow the safety components and add handrails and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I also think just to touch back on the 10, there's an allowance for 10 public piers in the shoreline plan. So we have not seen any public piers come, forward for proposal under the shoreline plan. So sorry, that dawned on me a little bit late, but I think that's maybe the number that was sticking out for you. But yeah, the safety elements, things like that would be allowed at, public piers and marinas as well.
Great. I guess, and I take a little concern with that only because I feel like on some of our public piers, and I'm thinking of a certain property, but the handrails and the ability to get that back open to the public is what is critical for them they need these handrails. But at the same time, they have major non-conforming use issues that I feel like that's our trade-off, is that you take out this major non-conforming use issue, we're going to give you the handrails that'll get you insurance on your public pier. And I don't know that we should apply this to the public, marinas and piers, because I think there's a lot more work to do. And this may be the carrot that we need to get the incentive to take down the non-conforming use.
Ms. Haldane?
Tiffany, I appreciate Ashley's recommendation that, if a pier is removed, it's non-conforming, that they should have some right to grandfather it. But along those lines, if a home is destroyed in the Tahoe Basin and it's grandfathered in, they have the right to rebuild that home as it was previously constituted, right, on the same footprint. Does the same thing apply to piers? Or do they have to, if a pier, for example, if a rock crib pier is destroyed, will they be required, they can rebuild, but will they be required to bring it into complete conformity? Do you know? Does our code address that?
Our code does address that. It's pretty explicit in our code that reconstructions are allowed. If you want to reconstruct something that is non-conforming, you may, but it must be in kind with what was previously there, including rock crib piers.
Okay. All right. So that could apply. I mean, based on the allowances we're giving as incentives, hopefully they would agree to go in with a single pile pier and to achieve those incentives.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Lane?
Just one quick question. Do we have an inventory of these piers?
Yes, with a caveat. So we have a pretty robust inventory of the rock crib piers basically on the California side, on the west and north shore up to State Line Point. And then we can kind of extrapolate that inventory to the Nevada side. So we have 57 rock crib piers on the California side. So if we extrapolate, I'm going to say less than 100 based on looking at our aerial photographs for the Nevada side. So less than 100 total. And we do have some, on the Nevada side in particular, some rock crib jetties and things like that kind of look like rock crib piers, but are not.
And then just a follow-up question, would TRPA consider being proactive and reaching out to some of these owners and letting them know that, you know, there's some incentives to do something?
Yes.
Madam Chair, may I ask one more question? So with regards to the Tahoe Keys, you mentioned that those floating piers are going to be the black with the black buoyancy devices. I guess I call them, and they are going to have the styrofoam in them.
Thanks, Graham St. Michelle, for the record. Yeah, I want to just not veer too far off our agenda's topic. But this item, the Keys Marina was a settlement agreement, kind of a historic violations and things like that was reached, I think it was a year ago, 2024 in the fall. And when we developed the agreement on what they'll rebuild there, we used a bill in California that was sort of the best practices for enclosure of floating material. So like the styrofoam that is needed to float, or whatever the material, I don't know if it was styrofoam. This California bill had a minimum sort of best practice standard of like how thick the enclosure is and what it needs to be made of, metal. And so we didn't cite the bill specifically, but we used that standard. And it was just part of the agreement to stipulate, so that we were being proactive to say it had to have some standard rather than just rebuild these.
Understood. I feel like, when we brought this back up, I think it was in response to what we saw out of the event last summer, not just in my neighborhood, but all across the lake. And I don't know that we addressed it if we're still, we're going to take it on next year. But that's where I ask, okay, if we haven't had the time to figure out the policy, that's what a moratorium is for, to say, hey, on this product, we're going to stop this for now as we figure out the best way to go forward. And with what we saw last year, I think that it's important to not go another year, especially looking at the weather patterns around the world right now. We're probably going to see something similar to what, we don't know what we're going to see, but I just think that the styrofoam is something that's one of the hardest, things to degrade in our environment. So I just don't understand why we would still be using it.
If I can just jump in, Madam Chair, Julie Reagan, for the record, we are not approving any new styrofoam, period. Like, we're not, and we're not doing it as a matter of practice, and staff and Tiffany can elaborate if need be. In the Tahoe Keys replacement of all their docks is with a modern material, as you are alluding to, that is a huge environmental benefit for that area.
And if I may, this sounds like, would this be APC that would take up shore zone material issues? Can we ask committee what their agenda looks like to put that back on? Just because we're not agendized for that.
Yeah,
here.
we'll revisit for sure,
Thanks.
Madam Chair. You bet.
Thank you. All right. Looking for two motions. I'm going to give someone else a chance to read these. Let's see who's on their toes today. Looks like Shelley is.
Madam Chair, I move to make the required findings contained in attachment C, including a finding of no significant effect for the adoption of amendments to Chapter 84 of the TRPA Code of Ordinances regarding expansions of non-conforming piers.
Thank you. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Alding?
Yes.
Mr. Bass?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Conrad Seda?
Yes.
Ms. Hill? Ms. Faustinos?
Yes.
Mr. Keykeper?
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Henigman?
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Loomer?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Madam Chair, motion passes.
Thank you. And the second motion, please.
Madam Chair, I further move to approve ordinance 2025 as contained in attachment D, amending ordinance 87-9 to adopt the amendments to Chapter 84 of the TRP Code of Ordinances as contained in attachment A, subject to the suggested language change to paragraph 6 as stated on the record.
Thank you. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Alding?
Yes.
Mr. Bass?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Conrad Seda?
Yes.
Ms. Hill? Ms. Faustinos?
Yes.
Mr. Keykeper?
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Henigman?
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Loomer,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes,
Madam Chair, motion passes.
thank you. We're on to our next agenda item 9, which is reports. Director Reagan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Agenda item 9A will begin with a brief report, and then I think we will move into the performance review. So if I may have the slides, and I'm going to invite Angela Ashley, our Human Resources Director, to come up and begin with just a few year in review remarks, and then I'll invite Angela to take over the rest of the presentation. If any of you have had a chance to look at your Google alerts this week, you should have seen a wonderful photo of our board chair, Haley Williamson, with a year of progress editorial opinion column that's in the local news outlets. And it also echoed this theme of progress. And these couple examples are only a portion of the pieces of progress, but the key actions that tell the story of a really incredible year of work of this board. 68 board actions in the last year is amazing. And that's everything from a resolution on wildfire awareness to, big policy actions, which we'll run through. But I feel so privileged to have this opportunity to lead this agency and to work with an incredible board and the team on staff that is truly so talented and amazing. And all the accomplishments that I'm running through reflect the staff's work, your work, the work of our Advisory Planning Commission, which is also volunteer, and our partners, 80 plus partners on Team Tahoe, which is the new visual identity for this broad partnership of the Environmental Improvement Program. And everyone working together is rolling up into this actions tell the story slide. So all the board actions, a couple of key things. We just talked about accessory dwelling units. 13 permitted in the last year, 65 cumulative. We are going to bring, as part of the housing work, a look at some of those, what they look like. Now, these are not all built. These have been permitted so far, but there's a key component to talk about housing and how accessory dwelling units can support all the goals that we have to have working people be able to live in Tahoe. And we feel, as a policy matter, the ADUs are important to that. So more to come. We had a big year of invasive species, 4,700 boats decontaminated. You all preemptively decided in the spring the risk of the gold mussel was too great to allow even clean, drained, and dry boats that show up the opportunity to launch without a decontamination. Our team rallied the Tahoe Resource Conservation District in partnership with the boat inspections, did a phenomenal job of retooling that program so that every visiting boat got a hot water decontamination and 0 new detections. So only 1 golden mussel was intercepted and required to be cleaned before launch. So that program continues to set the gold standard in the industry. The SEZ, we have talked about the stream environment zone threshold being achieved, but it's worth noting because we had the threshold evaluation report that indicated, we could have declared victory and moved on. We didn't. We said we've restored 1,100 acres collectively. We're setting the bar higher because there's more work to do to get naturally functioning wetlands restored in the basin. So a huge shout out to all the partners that worked on that. And telling the story around that is critical. We had amazing growth in our social media presence, 433% increase in our Instagram response, and almost 200% expansion in our Facebook presence. So communication and education is so integral, and our staff has really raised the bar in storytelling and trying to break down these very complex topics that you wrestle with so that everyone can understand, participate, and be part of the solution to protect the lake. We did almost 600 project field inspections, almost 1,200 tree removal permits, and then all the other outreach, news releases, e-newsletters, our database is almost 13,000 people in our electronic communications, and opinion columns, not just in our local papers, but in regional publications, and with national reach. So these are just a handful of a lot of different stats that were in my memo in the packet, but I did want to call attention to those and really do appreciate all the while we were doing sort of the day-to-day, on time, on budget, with quality, a clean, multiple clean audits in the last few years. Really incredible work of the support teams like finance and the legal team to really just excel. While at the same time, if we go to the next slide, we have, the day-to-day work, and then the board in April set our strategic priorities. So to achieve excellence in your day-to-day is hard in the landscape that we operate, but then to go above and beyond in these 4 strategic priorities that are truly like generational goals to restore clarity to 100 feet is extraordinary. And so here are some highlights, if you go to the next slide, of a few achievements that we've talked about at this level. You've heard detailed staff presentations, but a few worth noting. That golden mussel response was incredible. 17,000 interactions with beachgoers and non-motorized boaters and watercraft enthusiasts around the lake. And that was like people walking the beach. We recognized one of the ambassadors for a Lake Spirit Award just last month at our meeting. Just so much incredible work to reduce the threats from invasive species around the lake. Our partners did a report that actually Director Settlemyer mentioned during summit proceeding this year. More than 700,000 pounds of fine sediment were kept out of the lake. And that is a direct result of the TMDL, the Tahoe maximum daily load, that our implementation partners are working so hard on. The lake, we'd like to see a better response from that kind of anti-pollution standard that we have. We're working with our science partners to better understand what those drivers of clarity are, because we're still seeing clarity in the summer get worse and winter is continuing to improve. And why is that? And what can we do about it? More work to do on that front. The picture of the pier, the lottery that we have for new piers around the lake, that's our staff doing this drawing. And just to reiterate, like the amount of work that goes into those applications and selecting those very few piers, 12 every other year, that would be selected to be eligible to pursue a permit is a ton of work. So really appreciate Tiffany, Matt Miller, pictured, Zach Davis, and Brandy McMahon, and Wendy Jepson, who's the manager of our planning department. All the little icons are the 10 environmental threshold standards. And of course, we have the huge threshold evaluation report. Every 4 years, we report on how we're doing. 80 to 90%, depending on which indicators you're looking at, are trending, stable, they're improving, we're achieving and maintaining. And if you think of the legacy impacts that we deal with so much development, the vast majority of the development around the lake happened before we had the 1987 plan. To go back and restore is enormous, which is indicated by that picture of the Motel 6 on the left. You can see the old rundown development right smack dab in the middle of the marsh there at the Upper Truckee River, the biggest polluter of Lake Tahoe. And what it looks like now when you drive by on Highway 50, it is truly amazing, as if it were never there. But there was an old restaurant, the motel, our partners at the Conservancy with public and private funding, a considerable amount of mitigation funds collected on projects that TRPA holds in trust and then returns out to local jurisdictions or partners, in this case, the Conservancy, to support that. It shows how the public-private partnership can really work. And we're so proud of the work that's been done. And that project alone helped us go over that threshold of achieving the standard of the restoration standard for restoration of SEZs. So a lot of work on the water quality front, and more to come going forward. I'll take the next slide. So forest health and wildfire, strategic priority area number 2, Lake Tahoe West. You may have seen emails from me right before the government shutdown. I want to thank our partners at the Forest Service. Literally the day before they got out the decision on Lake Tahoe West, which has been a decade in the making, of about 50,000 acres that'll be immediately treated. There's another 10,000 acres of West Shore forests, of state and other lands over there. But our staff worked for years in partnership with the Forest Service, the Conservancy, with local private property owners on the West Shore. Member Gustafson knows very well, if the fire from Caldor in 21 had decided to burn on that side of the lake, we may have had a very different situation because of the dead and dying and the infrastructure on the West Shore. So that project's going forward next year, and our staff is very involved. We're very involved initially with a lot of the science that's informing resiliency and our new threshold update, which you'll be considering in February. But we also were very involved in just the final review of that and providing comments as the Forest Service goes into implementation. A fact that sometimes with all the hoopla of the summit gets lost, and we do these other big announcements. The picture there of the Tahoe Fire and Fuels team was marking another update of the 10-year fuels reduction strategy. And importantly, I want to mention below that picture is the image from this dais with Sheriff Coverly from Douglas County at the evacuation panel. And to answer Member Aldine's question about evacuation, we were conveying the information as part of that panel that we do have the first regional evacuation plan out. It's almost 200 pages. And there still needs to be more education and awareness around that. Many of you in local governments have been doing a lot of work in your jurisdictions. I know Member Gustafson has had many forums on this. So we do have a basin-wide evacuation plan. We had a really good discussion here at our governing board meeting around how we can support that, what our proper role is, not being a public safety agency and not calling evacuations, but we can support that in many ways, and we are. And part of that is through our land use issues. So the picture to the right is Keep Homewood Public. We started out last year with a very, very big day about the Homewood Master Plan and the gondola approval project there. And I'm really proud of our legal team, our planning team, Paul Nielsen, this board, for ensuring that that resort will be, although it's privately owned, will be continued into the future to be open to the public. And they are doing a huge private fuels reduction process that this board also approved. That is going on. New technology like that robot that clears land. The fire burn bot is pictured, and there's a lot of exciting work going on at the neighborhood scale on public lands, where we're trying to increase that pace and scale of fuels reduction to reduce the threat of catastrophic wildfires. So we're trying to get the word out to the community of all this energy that is happening on public land managers, with private homeowners, private HOAs, Tahoe Fund, other nonprofits supporting that in terms of philanthropy to support this kind of innovation. And we are leading around the world in the work that's happening in Tahoe, where we have a fragile environment that we can protect and at the same time reduce that threat of fire. That last picture is our staffer, Bruce Barr, who's our forester, who is just an incredible asset to the agency, working at the Lake Tahoe Community College with the Rising Scholars Program. And some of the folks there, have been formerly incarcerated or, have started over their lives. And a lot of those students that Bruce had immediately got deployed into work on the LA fires down in Southern California just this year. So, trying to give back to the community is a big core pillar of our strategic priorities, and it's in our DNA here at TRPA. So very proud of the team for that. Two more strategic priorities to run through, and then we'll move on with it. You heard a lot about transportation. The next slide just shows a couple of highlights. The big story was the Regional Transportation Plan in July. You adopted the RTP, which as an MPO, we are required to do that every 4 or 5 years. And so that took the huge amount of work of our staff over many, many years. And if you look at the lower picture, the Tahoe Event Center, another example of how a very high profile, controversial project is also contributing to other goals. So just this year alone, $1.4 million collected in surcharges from tickets at the event center supported transit. So that was a huge shift in how we approach meaningful improvements that are multiple benefits in a project that spurred the creation of the Lake Link microtransit. So getting that permit into conformance and compliance was a major heavy lift from our staff, and very grateful for the staff work on that. And meanwhile, issuing $11.4 million in regional grants to support transportation, the mobility hub and aquatic invasive species permanent inspection station, other trails, $250 million of EIP projects overall were out on the ground this year, more than 40 projects, and all of our partners are deserve all the credit for pushing them forward. And then if we just go into one more slide that was kind of a fun one that we didn't get to spend a lot of time on. But if you all come in from Highway 50 into Myers, Brooke is kind of shaking her head. She knows this story. She's seen this movie before. Without this SMART grant technology, we would not have known that there were more than really 59 that we caught wrong one-way, routes around the roundabout. So if you're coming down the hill from Sacramento, you enter Myers, you stay to the right of the roundabout. People, this one in the red, you can see we're going around the left. So it is a miracle that people did not have head-on collisions and perish in this roundabout. But a huge shout out to our data science and data team that supported the Tahoe Transportation District in their initiatives to get more funding. And so they have one wave of SMART grant funding. They've put in for two. This particular video we think is very compelling to open the door for more funds so that we can improve facilities in partnership with Caltrans, with NDOT, that are safety improvements. And so our staff often form the backbone of regional grant requests. And a lot of that work goes unnoticed. And I wanted you to know how important that it is, because we can't be successful as a basin to compete for these federal and state and other funds if you don't have that regional data. And so really a huge thanks to our team members for supporting that. But as a result of this video, Caltrans was immediately able to get in there, add more signage, do some improvements. And to our knowledge, it's a better situation today. But it was so scary to watch the video because the first person starts and then everyone was just following, like follow the leader, just going around the wrong way.
I want to see part of.
And yeah, I mean, my house 2 miles down the road, I've seen it and it's scary. So, okay, so we'll continue.
Picture goes away just because I've said this many times. We are the one roundabout somehow, actually in the whole state of California, that didn't get a piece of art or a sculpture in the middle of the roundabout. And I've said it over and over. They literally gave us a log. And if we had a sculpture in the middle of the roundabout, like most of them you see, if as a driver, you would say, whoa, oh, there's a roundabout in front of me. And I think that might be part of the safety concern, honestly, is that we didn't get a piece of art.
Thank you, Mary Bass. With an artist husband, he reminds me of that every time we go through it. So I am very keen on that one, and I would love to work on that.
Director Settlemeyer, and then I have Cindy. Go ahead.
Just a question. Thank you for that. Did Caltrans bother to at least see if you could determine the license plates and mail somebody a little reminder or a diagram or a video about how to use her?
That I don't know. I don't know. We'll follow up. Thank you for that. Okay, just a couple more slides and I'll wrap up here. Tahoe Living, next slide. You've heard, you did a workshop, you've had many engagement opportunities this year. January, our big topic for the board will be the final decision of what goes into the environmental impact statement, the environmental review of the next phase of housing work, cultivating community, conserving the basin, under our vice chair's leadership. The chair of the Regional Planning Committee, Member Henigman, has just been a driver working in tandem with the committee, with many of you, to share that goal of driving down the cost of housing. You know, we all share that goal of allowing people who live in, people who work in the basin to live in the basin, because more and more people have to commute in. You know, average about 50% of the jobs now are commuting in on the North Shore. We know that's more like 60+%. We've got to get after this problem. And I know that we all have that goal in mind. And we can debate the different policies, and you'll be doing that in January. But our team has been so engaged with the community and listening to people who typically don't have the ability to come out and engage in meetings. So our staff have been going out and doing, you know, bilingual interpreted meetings and meeting with social services organizations, going into the faith communities, people that sometimes are afraid to go to government meetings. So really appreciate the work of our team on this, and to bring you some recommendations of how we can move the needle on housing, all under Mr. Hester's able tutelage and mentorship, and just another plug of his wonderful award by the Nevada American Planning Association chapter, the President's Award. We wanted him to wear those horns at the end of the meeting, but he just said, well, I don't know if I want to get that far down the road, but that was kind of a nice prop on the podium there. But really appreciate the hard work of this board.
That's the Bull Award.
Right.
I didn't get that award. I haven't been there long enough to put out enough bull to get it.
Well, we just wanted you to wear it because it would have been funny. But at any rate, a lot of work underway. And I just want to acknowledge in this slide the concern we're hearing around fire evacuation as it relates to land use. We share that concern. And I hope that we can, through more educational workshops, have that conversation about the scary word of density, in that we are not adding, we're not growing the basin. Like, this is about using development rights that we already have allotted to place them in concentrated areas that are walkable, that are bikeable, that are closer to services that can be evacuated more efficiently in a fire. And that is what the emergency professionals all talked about in that May briefing at the governing board. So we have more work to do, clearly, to get a conversation going around that, and we're committed to it. And then mission critical operations, things that are aside from the strategic priorities, but underpin those strategic priorities. Our data and monitoring team is incredible. That's a picture of one of our field monitoring technicians out in a stream. They're going out, they're counting bald eagles, they're counting raptors, they're doing all kinds of wildlife surveys and stream water quality data that underpins the entire structure of how we operate in the basin. And we heard from you and from many of our partners and stakeholders that we want more transparency about the compliance and enforcement of the regional plan. So we are actively, underway with doing a new dashboard that is easier to follow, less complicated in terms of finding information. We did a briefing on compliance and how it's not just the legal department, it's really the entire agency and how we approach it in various aspects. Where do mitigation funds go? Tracy Campbell did an amazing presentation in front of the Ops Committee, Operations and Governance, about, a typical house gets permitted. Where do the fees go? What are they used for? They're used back in local jurisdictions for environmental improvements. And we are going to continue to talk about that around transportation in the first quarter of next year. Compliance statistics, we'll be rolling that into the annual report, which you'll get in February. Our education and outreach, Lake Tahoe West is a further story on the cover of the paper, which is at your dais. And we just distributed about 50,000 copies through the mail to homeowners, to local residents, and to areas outside the basin. So, our staff are, in the summer when we have interns, they're the ones, but otherwise we're out filling out newsstands and taking them to coffee shops to make sure people get the word about what's going on in Tahoe. And then the photograph of our Leadership Academy, a really big kudos to Angela Ashley in her leadership in the Human Resources Department, is going through our second cohort of Leadership Academy, growing the capacity of the future of the agency. I started new office hours this year based on feedback from last year's evaluation and from one-on-one interviews that I did with staff, and that Angela went back and did a follow-up this year and talked to every single member of our 76-person staff to hear what's on their mind, what are areas that we could work on. And so I have been doing office hours just as the legal department's doing, and just getting more touch points with staff, and that seems to be going really well. And so with that, we will conclude with what's coming up. Wishing you all the best holidays. Buckle in for a busy year in the first 4 months. We've got housing in January. We've got a new agenda that we will be putting up online to get public comments. We hear a lot from the public that it's very difficult to navigate our confusing agendas. So we have an entire team that's been working on making our agendas easier to read, more scannable, more graphic, more visual. So we're going to try that out next year. We had the convening of our working group around thresholds, and I really do appreciate Director Sotomayor, member Ashley Conrad Seda, for serving on what we call TUI Swig, the Threshold Update Initiative Stakeholder Working Group. We'll be bringing to the Environmental Improvement Committee in January an info briefing. And then in February, you'll be taking action on forest health and water quality threshold updates. So things that have been in the works for years. And in March, discussion around VMT policy, vehicle miles traveled. And then mark your calendars for April 22nd and 23rd. We'll have a 2-day board meeting as we typically do in the spring. And the second day, the 23rd, will be our strategic planning session where we'll roll up all the comments we've heard about our work plan and get some direction from you on what we want to set in terms of our work plan for next year. But with that, I will conclude. And I thank you for the opportunity to do a walkthrough of some of our accomplishments. There's so much more work to do. We have so many challenges, but I appreciate the opportunity to be your executive director and to work with the great talented board that we have. So thank you.
I'm happy to roll in. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you. For the record, Angela Atchley, Director of Human Resources and Organizational Development for TRPA. I'm here today to seek approval for a salary increase for Executive Director Reagan based on her performance review. And that process consisted of a self-assessment that she put together. That self-assessment was emailed to all of the governing board members and staff, along with a survey link that consisted of 1 question on overall goal attainment, 6 questions based on the core competencies that we have here at TRPA, and 3 open-ended questions. There were a total of 36 respondents. 7 of those were governing board members, and there were 29 staff. As you can see from the staff report and from the summary of performance review results, Julie received above average scores in all areas of the core competencies and in the overall goal attainment. So for that reason, we are recommending a 4% pay increase to be effective on December 8th.
Thanks, Angela. Questions or comments from the board? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion. It's up on the screen.
Sure, I'll make a motion to increase Julie Reagan's base pay from $218,324.18 to $227,057.15 per year effective December 8th, 2025.
Sure about that 15 cents? We don't want to.
It's a technicality with me.
I'm teasing. 6, 7. You did it. Someone did it. Can you call the roll, please, Maria?
Ms. Aldine,
Yes.
Mr. Bass,
Yes.
Ms. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Ms. Hill, Ms. Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Keycapper,
Yes.
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Rice, Mr. Henigman,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Loomer,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, motion passes.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is our general counsel performance review and proposed compensation, as well as our general counsel report. I don't know if you guys want to do that similarly. Graham, did you have a report you wanted to make in the beginning? Nope. Okay. All right. Cool.
Give me a chance to make a comment after.
Okay.
I will. Yeah.
Sounds good. Angela, if you wouldn't mind presenting again, information can be found on page 333 of your packets.
Wonderful. Again, thank you. Again, for the record, Angela Atchley, Director of Human Resources for TRPA. Again, I'm seeking approval for a performance-based pay increase for Graham St. Michel. This was his first performance review as general counsel. Again, he also completed a self-assessment, including some agency accomplishments, which that was also sent to governing board members and staff, along with the survey link, very similar to what we completed with Executive Director Reagan. There were a total of 33 respondents in this case, consisting of 5 governing board members and 28 staff. And again, Graham received above average scores in all of the areas on that performance review. So we are recommending a 4% pay increase based on that.
Thanks, Angela. Graham, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks. It's been a really fun adventure for me in this first year and working with all of you. And I just want to express my gratitude and appreciation. I know this isn't, it's hard work for staff and for all of us at the agency and for you all to come to these meetings. But in reflecting, I just feel like the work that we're doing here and working through these issues and these challenges, it is hard work, but that we're it's a good effort. It's a good, it's for a good cause. And I feel really proud to be a part of this group and to be working with you. So I'm really excited to continue on with that. And I feel very optimistic that I'll keep growing in this role. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Graham. And this came before the legal committee this morning, and it was an enthusiastic, unanimous yes for Graham, along with a whole bunch of gratitude. So I'll leave it there, but we really appreciate the work too, Graham. Cindy.
Haley, if I could just add to that, because I'm not on legal committee, but I so appreciate, obviously Julie too. And sorry, I didn't make any comment there. But 1 year in, and to follow in the shoes that you had to follow in, and the huge transition is just incredible. Your support, you've been available and accessible to, I'm sure, all the board members when we've had questions, and the leadership, especially in the Homewood discussions that we've been talking about, during and now subsequently. I just really appreciate that. And I know it's tough rolling in, following somebody who had such a legacy with this agency. And I think you're doing a tremendous job. So thank you.
And with that, I'm looking for the motion that is now on the screen.
Happy to make that motion.
Well, as long as
Oh,
you
I'm sorry,
add
Shelley.
an additional 15 cents. Change it.
Yeah, this is straight even. I don't know.
That's fine.
No, I make a motion to increase Graham St. Michelle's base pay from 180 to 187,200 per year effective December 8th, 2025.
Thank you. We have a motion. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Miss Alding,
Yes.
Mr. Bass.
Yes.
Miss Bennett,
Yes.
Miss Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Miss Hill, Miss Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Keycapper,
Yes.
Miss Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Rice, Mr. Henigman,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Miss Lane,
Yes.
Miss Loomer,
Yes.
Miss Williamson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, motion passes.
Thank you. And thank you both again.
Madam Chair, may I just say thank you? And I know I speak for Graham as well, that we're just so privileged to be here, and thank you for your support. And then I don't know, I forgot to mention the incredible rainbow. Did everyone see the rainbow this morning over the lake and coming into the basin? So there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes on a board day that we don't want you to have to see, because it's always a struggle. There's a lot of moving parts. But when we all saw the rainbow this morning, we said it's all going to be okay. So thank you very much.
It also means that rain and snow are coming. All right, rain at least. Agenda item 10, governing board member reports. Any governing board members have a report?
I do real
Please.
quickly. I apologize. I know we're trying to wrap up. Two things. One is yesterday I spent almost 10 hours in a Board of Supervisors meeting on one project, affordable housing project in Western County. The reason I bring it up is that for those of you not involved in local government, you may not realize that evacuation is the main topic on every project we look at, not just within the basin. And where I almost have humor with it is this project is located 500 feet from Interstate 80, and they were worried about evacuation. So there is no solution that in an instant, everybody can be evacuated from any location. And what we have to do is trust our law enforcement officials who were there yesterday and gave us quite a great explanation of the phasing, of the timing, and how they go about it. But again, this is 500 feet from Interstate 80. And yet still not adequate in some people's minds in that community. So I wanted to bring that up when we were talking about evacuation, and just making sure that we're thoughtful, that we need to be prepared, but we need to put the tools in our public safety officials and trust them to do that. Fanny Bridge is almost done. And thank you, Julie, for attending the other day. We did a little photo shoot. I haven't seen the results of that photo shoot where we we made a few remarks with all the funding partners that were involved in that project. For the governing board members, Shelley was part of this board, but maybe no one else. Started in 2015, 2016, and got stalled out, ran over budget. We had a bad flood year, but it is really part of the complete streets, safety, pedestrian access on both sides. And we're looking forward to getting that open right after the first of the year. But we did do a great photo with all of our funding partners facing the camera. And then for posterity reasons, we turned and deemed it the new Fanny Bridge. So anyway, but Julie, thank you and your leadership in this governing board. I was working over at the PUD when that project came through, and I remember Clem Shute and Bill Yates having a long discussion with how we had to be able to shut off that and use it for local purposes because they did not want to increase capacity to the West Shore. Now, that was before the days of catastrophic wildfire, where now we are thrilled to have an alternative in case something were to happen on a bridge, that we would still have another access point with the other bridge out of the West Shore. So thank you, Julie.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks, Cindy. Any other governing board member reports? Alex?
I can just share quickly, the California legislature is going to reconvene on January 5th. This will be the second year of a 2-year session. So there'll be some bills that are carrying over from last year. And then a number of new bills that'll be introduced, some of which will be of importance for Tahoe. There's be stuff on wildlife coexistence and I think trying to address some of the last minute budget bills that have been pushed through last year, trying to do away with public input on projects and building on endangered species habitat. The governor will announce his proposed budget in early January, and that'll kind of start off the budget process. So we'll be, seeing what comes, and the legislature will weigh in, and we have months of discussions to go, but that's all forthcoming. Yes, and this will be his last budget because it's his last year.
Thanks, Alex. And not seeing any other committee member, governing board member. Do we have committee reports? Any committee? Ashley?
Thanks. I have a report on the Threshold Update Initiative Stakeholder Working Group on Dan Segan's behalf. He wasn't able to be here. So we reviewed, oh, he's right there. Sorry, he just wanted me to do it. Sorry, Dan, I didn't see you. So we, as you heard, you'll be hearing potential updates to forest health and water quality threshold standards in a couple months. So we had our first discussion on those, and it was really nice to have a very good meeting, open discussion to really dig into the science and the background. So we talked about those. The forest health standards are a substantive update of the vegetation preservation standards to ensure alignment with the latest science. We've obviously learned a lot over these last 10 to 15 years of this new catastrophic fire regime. And so the forest health standards include the agency's first standards related to wildfire and community protection and preparedness for wildfire. We also had some water quality updates, and they were part of administrative cleanup of the threshold standards that we've been working on with the Tahoe Science Advisory Council for 7 years. We requested as a group that staff conduct a review of protections for aspens and high elevation pines like the endangered white bark pine within our threshold, and to report back to the group. And then we also unanimously supported moving forward with draft standards. So we'll meet again in January as a threshold group to review potential changes and as a result of the requested review. And then we'll bring them to the full, well, first the AIP and then the full board.
That is awesome. Thanks for that update.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. And seeing no other committee reports, we're now on our final agenda item. This is our public interest comment period on any item listed or not listed on the agenda. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker, but this is now the time to address the governing board. Is there anyone present in person wishing to make public comment at this time? Mr. Hester.
I can wait till after online if that's all right.
Sure. Okay. Mr. Hester, we will come back to you. And then let's go on that line then, please. Catherine, do we have people online wishing to make comment at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 3 hands raised online.
Okay.
Doug Flaherty, please unmute to make your comment.
Yeah, Doug Flaherty, TahoeCleanAir.org.
You've got my comments from agenda items 8A and B, so I won't get into those. No government agency has the right to make it harder to escape wildfire. TRPA continues to operate in a pre-AI regulatory captured environment, which is and will rapidly overtake your archaic process in the near future. Because of updated technology, as I explained a couple of years ago at Fallen Leaf Lake at the retreat, it's going to fundamentally change the way you have to do business, because right now you shield from the public transparency on a daily basis. So a little update on the future. I created, or not created, but I commissioned the independent wildfire evacuation study of October 2024 through Ladris AI, and some incredible subject matter experts from pyroanalysis, which included the incident commander on the Paradise Fire, John Messina, and Shane Lauderdale, the operations chief on Paradise. They were the ones that constructed this analysis after 400 simulations. So shame on anybody that continues to belittle it or ignore it. So what's happening in the future? By June of next year, there's going to be at least 3 user-centric apps for people to get on their phones that are going to contain transparent information that will make the October 2024 independent wildfire evacuation analysis look like the Model A. You guys won't continue to be able to play your game. You won't be able to continue to ignore the facts. And you all receive your individual government associated paychecks, no matter how many people die in a wildfire. Very tragic. But your game's going to be up, whether it's done in the court system or a combination of the court system and technology. And I'm looking forward to it. Until then, I don't think many projects are going to move forward. You're going to have to regroup, and you're going to have to replace your leadership, and you're going to have to replace your thinking, like it or not. Thanks so much.
The next hand raised is Todd Poth. Todd, please unmute to make your comment.
Good morning. It's Todd Poth for the record, Nevada resident, actually here in State Line. I want to make a quick comment and bring attention to the Governor Board. I'm not sure if you're aware, the Douglas County School Districts run into a small problem with their financial stability. They were actually pulled in front of the tax department last week with a mandate to make some severe changes and cuts. One of the things was talked about, as often talked about, is cutting the Zephyr Cove and Whittle schools, or making changes to that area, which has had quite a few changes over the last few years. How this ties back into the TRPA is with your new initiative of cultivating communities. I think everyone on the governing board and TRPA should understand that schools are an essential part of any community. And a loss or change or reduction of students, or the ability of students to attend a local school, would have severe effects on workforce, on transportation, you name it. There's talks about busing kids across Kingsbury, which would obviously have a huge effect on VMTs and areas like that. So I wanted to make sure that the TRPA is aware of that. I'd also love to ask the TRPA to possibly have a representative to maybe reach out to the school district. I'm not sure, as some of these cuts are happening, they truly understand the implications of some of the things it might do, from having vacant buildings to mitigation to all kinds of different stuff that probably not outside, is completely outside the realm of what's going to happen there. So I know the local fire department is committed to have Chief Lindgren is committed to be at the next board meetings to make sure he can offer any insight to things that are brought up that might not work. And I think it'd be great if the TRPA could also have some sort of commitment to that as we figure out what the Douglas County School Board needs to do in order to get back into financial stability. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Todd's also my neighbor and a good one at that.
The last hand raised is Rhonda Tyser. Rhonda, please unmute to make your comment.
Thank you. Once again, I am Rhonda Tyser, speaking to you as a longtime lover of the Tahoe Basin and a 34-year resident of Incline Village. Thank you to those of the board members who voted against rubber stamping the Washoe Tahoe area plan. So now we take our case to the courts. We are fully aware Washoe County operates to constantly exhaust our will and our resources. TRPA is just the enabler. Your council says your approval of the Washoe Tahoe area plan is just advisory, not prescriptive. You say that Washoe County has the last word on allowing ADUs on any size lot. You say Washoe County has the last word on allowing 6-story condos along Highway 28. Well, I had to laugh because we all know that's not how the system works. In August, Washoe County approved the TAP amendments, emphasizing the requirement, the mandate, not the option, to act in accord with TRPA Phase 2 regulations. TRPA rejected the few alterations Washoe County planners proposed to the TAP. Does that sound like Washoe County will not go along with whatever TRPA approves? And any owner or developer denied a permit to put an ADU on a parcel in Incline will sue or at least threaten to sue. In response, to avoid legal expense to the county, Washoe planners will likely approve the development. Commissioners will be likely to approve the development. So again, we Incline residents will have to mount a protest for every ADU permit that threatens a neighborhood for any reason. And almost any ADU will increase density and traffic in an evacuation and threaten safety. So we will have to hire lawyers and pay fees. It's the same old pattern playing out over and over and over. That's how the broken system works. It's sad to see more of the same. We always hope for higher conscience and increased sanity in our government representatives. Maybe next year. Until then, thank you for your service and Happy New Year.
Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment.
All right, thank you all. With that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Oh, I'm sure not. I'm not. I'm looking for Mr. Hester. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to say you got a heck of a deal on these two people to my left. And Board Member Gustafson mentioned the legacy, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask our own Catherine Houston to stand up and share with you the legal department's holiday fashion legacy that she's carrying forward. Okay. And with that segue, on behalf of Julie and all the staff, happy holidays, and please join us for our holiday lunch.
Thank you, Mr. Hester, and it's right back at you guys and to the staff as well. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you. I'm going to honor that motion to adjourn now. Any opposed? All right. Thanks, guys. We're adjourned.